Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have returning guest, one of my favorite guests, Nick Redfern. He has a new book coming out soon. We don't have the exact date on that yet. I just talked to him at the original date. I think it might get pushed back a little bit. It was supposed to be October 5th. It might get pushed back a little later, but boy, this is a subject I've wanted to cover for so long. I've covered it in ways on shows, but not totally. And when Nick said he was writing a book on this subject, I'm like, all right, when can I book it? Name of the book, Time Travel, the Science and Science Fiction. Oh yeah, we get to talk about time travel tonight. Oh yeah, baby. Oh, you know how pumped I am for this, especially to talk with one of my favorite writers, Nick Redfern, on this subject. Now, usually a lot of times I get a book to read beforehand. This one's not due out, so I am winging it tonight. I haven't read the book yet. It's on my wish list for Christmas. I told my wife that's like number one thing I want. If I don't get it before Christmas, I might get it before. I don't know if I can wait. But everybody who knows me knows this is one of my favorite subjects. I love all of them, of course, in the Paranormal Soup Bowl. But time travel has got a little special place in my heart because it's fascinated me from my earliest memories and my earliest introductions to science fiction. All right, guys, so we got that, and we do have to talk tonight. We got a lot in the World Wide Web of Weird. I had to cut some out because I do want to talk tonight about a friend of the show, friend of Kingdom and I, who passed away, Marcus. We'll talk about that at the end of the World Wide Web of Weird. We got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling into it. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest, Nick Redfern, will join us by phone. He doesn't get the best internet where he's at in Texas, so we've never had him on the webcast. But you know what he looks like. Everybody should know. He's got an action figure, too. But we'll have him on the phone line after the World Wide Web of Weird, after our first commercial break, and I cannot wait to talk about time travel. Joining me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Jamie D. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Hey, I'm doing well, thank you.
You know how pumped I gotta be. You know how much I love time travel. I just can't wait. I always find a way to like get like in certain subjects. I find a way to like redirect it to like, well, could it be? You know, everybody's like, could it be ancient aliens? I do that, but I go, could it be time travelers? You know, that's just something I've always thought about. I'm fascinated with everything time travel, you know, related. You know, so my favorite movies have to do with time travel. Back to the Future, 12 Monkeys. I mean, I go on. Terminator, it's time travel. You know, I mean, I love all that stuff. Doctor Who is one of my favorite TV shows. Quantum Leap, I have the box sets. I mean, I love time travel. I'm delaying a little bit because I'm hoping Rob will join. Rob, don't rush because he might be listening in his car. He's on his way home.
I think he's going to be a little bit.
I think it's going to be a little bit. So I got to run the World Wide Web Weird tonight. So bear with me because I am always rusty at this. So let me make sure I get the share screen going before I even roll into that. Share screen. Let's make sure I got that. Because those listening on the Paranormal Radio app, Paranormal Radio app, we are a webcast. We do show videos and pictures at times, and you know, I have something special at the end for our friend Marcus too. We might play if Rob makes it in time. It's kind of hard for me to play it on my end though. All right, there's my share screen. Should be working. Okay, we'll go back to me. So we got a lot to get to. So let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, I figured we'd continue. I promised this last week because I didn't update us on it yet because I wanted to wait to see if more came on the British, the British snap engineer and his wife and baby and dog who were found dead in a kind of California trail. This newest thing is really more just speculation, but I thought I'd bring it up. The toxicology has not come back, but they're looking into the fact that it could be lightning. That's what they're saying. For those listening on the Paranormal Radio app, on the Paranormal Soup 24/7 channel, we are a webcast you can watch on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. But I'll narrate as best as possible, as I usually say. And now I got to also try to run the video here, the pictures and stuff. So bear with me. Let me pull up my folder for this. And it's hard to look at this picture. It's been sad days lately, and this story saddens me. How many ways you can break your heart looking at this picture. British snap engineer and his wife, baby, and dog who were found dead on a remote California trail may have been struck by lightning, they're now saying. They've already, they're waiting on the algae to come back, the toxic algae, they'll know by the toxicology reports if it's that. Snapchat engineer Jonathan Garish, 45, his wife Ellen Chung, their one-year-old daughter Muji, if I'm saying that right, I hope, and the family's dog Oski, if you say that, were discovered dead in the Sierra National Forest August 17th. Based on the autopsy results, investigators have confirmed that they were not killed by gases from the nearby mine or with weapons such as a gun or a knife, giving rise to the theory that the family died after coming in contact with toxic algae. After water samples from the nearby Merced River tested positive for the toxic algae, authorities on Friday closed the 28 miles of waterway between the towns of Briceburg and Bagby. While waiting the family's toxicology results, officials have now turned their attention to a lightning strike as a possible cause of death, according to a recent New York Times article. According to the National Weather Service, lightning is primarily an injury to the nervous system, often with brain injury and nerve injury. Serious burns seldom occur. The bodies of the deceased showed no visible signs of trauma, as authorities previously reported. Only about 10% of lightning strikes result in death, often due to cardiac arrest. Lightning kills an average of 49 people each year in the U.S., and hundreds more are injured. They always say, you're more likely to get struck by lightning than win the lotto, as everybody always tells me. Well, too bad they couldn't win the lotto. The mystery continues this round. I got this from Daily Mail. What caused the California family's death? Toxic algae blooms were discovered around 12 miles downstream from where Garish and his family were discovered dead, prompting the Bureau of Land Management last week to close the hiking trail. And basically, they're waiting on those toxicology reports to come back. will know more then. But lightning, I don't know, Jamie. I mean, lightning can do some powerful things, but I know from what I've read, the mother, was found further down the trail and had the cell phone on her. So it seemed like they were separated. I don't know if you've read any of that.
Oh yeah. In fact, we're doing a missing 411 on them type experiment, like ITC experiment this week.
So you're gonna do it this Wednesday on Weird Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I have to go. It's hard for me to get Weird Wednesday now because I have to get up at 7 a.m. I will tomorrow to take my kids to school. It's school season, so that's why you guys haven't seen me. I miss you guys on the Weird Wednesday. So next up, let's get to the next one. Hold on. So out of practice with that. I should check. No, all right. No Rob yet. Let me pull this up. I'm hoping he makes it here towards the end. I'm hoping. All right, hold on. Let me get ahead of myself here. So this next one happened over a month ago. I've been really late on some things. It's from the Jolt.net. Leaked DHS footage of a A-10 Warhog being chased by a UAP from UAP discussion on Instagram. This is from, like I said, the Jolt.net. Okay, guys, here is the reveal. This is the footage that was directly leaked to me via a Department of Homeland Security agent. What you see or you are looking at is a very first legitimate leak of a genuine UAP buzzing and following an A-10 Warthog from nearby Davis Monthan Air Force Base. We've heard many stories lately of fighter jets coming into close contact with the unknown objects, but no footage has ever surfaced until today. The object in question was analyzed and found to be authentic UAP of unknown origin that exhibited advanced flight capabilities. The object in question came extremely close to the A-10 during its routine flight and began following and even catching up to the jet before changing its direction. The A-10 seemed to have taken notice of the object as it eventually turned and circled the same area again. The unknown craft was once again buzzed the A-10 dangerously close before taking off in the opposite direction. This is a longer video. You can get this, like he said, what is it called? For the full video, which I got a lot of it, but where was that site? I said it, and now I lost it. The NYUAP discussion. I don't know if that stands for New York. We'll go ahead and roll that UFO beam footage here. And I only got a little bit of it. They have a longer video of this, but I think this is some kind of infrared camera. I'm not, it seems like it's using heat. Maybe it could be a thermal camera. I'm not sure. It actually looks like it's a thermal camera. But definitely it looks like it's chasing it. And don't tell me that's a bird. I said the A-10 might have taken notice of it. You see how it veers up?
It's not a bird.
Yeah. There's more of this. Like I said, the NYUAP discussion on YouTube. Check that out, this video. It's odd. I don't know what to say about that. Here's like I guess a flip of it, a flip of the negative in a way. They were black. Now I guess this is the thermal flipped, and like more of an up or close. It's still just like a white dot floating up there, But it was definitely gaining speed and maneuverability and chasing this A-10. That's got to concern the military. And they're saying, you got to wonder how often it actually is happening. It's probably happening a lot. All right, now I got to remember how to exit out of this video because I'm so rusty at this. There we go. Okay. All right, we'll close that. I know. It's not as beautiful as when Rob does it. Okay, next up, Dory, or Raven, shared this on her social media, this story. And I'm like, ooh, I got to talk about this. This is a pony, and we've had the cattle mutilations recently, and I believe this is in Wales. I'm going to butcher the town name when I try to say it, if I even try. It's really weird long, but I believe I looked up the town. It's in Wales. But 5 ponies were killed, and more were harmed, and I found this really odd. This comes from Deb Hatswell is the person, and it's debhatswell.wordpress.com. is the website. Ponies killed and savagely attacked by unknown animals. Warning, sensitive images. Now, I'm only showing this image. There's other images. You can go to their website. Like I said, it's Deb Hatswell. That's DebHatswell.wordpress.com. There's more pictures if you want to look. I wasn't going to share all those. A worried horse owner has reached out through Facebook in the hopes of solving the mystery that occurred on her farm when several of her ponies were attacked. Sadly, some were killed by an unknown predator. The gruesome attack happened on the 8th of September in Midney Digarig. It's a way long name that I just cannot pronounce, and near the Four Roads area. The devastated owner wrote, "I'm absolutely devastated to be writing this. 2 nights ago, our beautiful Shetlands were attacked during the night. 2 have survived, but sadly, the other 5 were found dead." And like I said, there's a bunch of other pictures on here showing it. 2 of the 5 were found headfirst deep in the hedge, one with lacerations to her back and legs. Another mare had her mane and tail ripped out and left scattered around her. The 4th had her stomach ripped open, and the 5th had a small laceration on her stifle and bleeding from her mouth. If humans did this, I don't know what I can say. People are horrible. I'm heartbroken beyond words, and I can't believe what's happened. I've asked a number of people to come and help me figure out what has happened, including my vet, and it appears that a dog or some sort of animal has done this. If anyone else has experienced this in the area recently, please let me know, and maybe we can help each other figure out what is doing this. This isn't a post I thought I would ever need to share, and I don't ever want to wake up to the scenes I found yesterday morning again. Please let me know if you have any info. And I guess you could report it. Doesn't say where, but maybe reach out to this website, the debhatswell.wordpress.com, if anybody's in Wales and's had similar experiences. Now, I know there's big cat sightings all over the UK. I don't know if that's related to it. I know Wales and Cardiff, that area is a very mystical place. And you get deep down in the rabbit hole. They talk about shape-shifting reptilian cults and all that kind of stuff there. Who knows? What nefarious things are going on, but it sounds like the vet's telling her it was, if I understand what I'm reading here, that it had to have been some kind of canine dog-like creature. But man, total of 7 ponies attacked, 5 completely killed. It's not just a dog, I would think, would do that. I guess a dog could, but it's hard to imagine that it was a dog that did this much damage and this, terrorized these animals this bad. But I think it was last week we had the cattle mutilation story, and it more sounded like that was revenge and people. I don't know. Could this be the same deal, too? I don't know. All right, no wrap yet. Okay, I'll keep going. All right, next up here, Article 4. Oh, and then I forget to place the video. So we got a ghost chair movement here. You saw that. I'll play it again here in a second. This is chair moves on its own in a haunted pub. Got some unexplained mysteries. Recently released footage from the Lansum pub in Cardiff. Again, another place, the near area. They got animal mutilations and they got ghost pubs, ghost hunting pubs. Shows a piece of furniture with a mind of its own. When a pub manager, Haley Budd, sat down at one of the tables to take a break one evening back in July, she had an unexplained encounter that would leave her scratching her head. While browsing her mobile phone, one of the chairs opposite her can be seen moving all on its own. It's not clear from the video how this happened, and there's no indication that she moved it herself. I was looking at the chair, I was looking at my phone, but I saw it out of the corner of my eye, she said. I heard it as well, so I asked a customer if they had seen anything, and they said they also heard the noise. I always try to find the most logical expression, so that in the video you can see me looking to see if it was something in my bag that had moved, and I was trying to tell myself that maybe it was the wind. I've tried to recreate it so many times before, but there's no logical explanation. I checked the CCTV to make sure I hadn't been imagining it. I was frightened enough to quit my job, and I ran out of there. But I wasn't frightened enough, to quit my job and run out of there. But I was really shocked. The building itself has something of a reputation of strange occurrences. There's a long-term rumor about regulars. Among the regulars about a woman haunting the pub and people who live in the flats above the pub that says there's a strange goings-ons up there, said Bud. I'm not scared just because I work here for 8 years, and she's never done anything that's a cause of concern. She really just wants to make herself known. And boy, it's got to be a hard job for ghosts with everybody on their cell phones to get people's attention. But she did a good job of getting this person off their phone for a minute and getting her attention. So let me go ahead and play this. And the problem with me is I don't get audio on my videos. This one didn't have any audio anyway. See that? See that chair move? Have you seen this one, Jamie?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's just a little bit of movement, but to me it's a big deal. I believe this woman's experience here. It's caught right on CCTV. She
So
looks
we
like
see
an
both
honest
her
reaction.
feet on the floor, like she's not
Yeah.
scooting it with her other foot.
You see her feet are towards the back here.
Okay.
We'll watch it again. Oh, this is something else happens in the pub, I guess. This picture, that could be explainable. All right, let's go back. Let's go back, watch it. I got to watch my time here, but hold on. It'll replay again here in a second. A little bit closer. You know, look at her feet. Her feet don't move. You can see her feet are still when it moves.
Oh yeah, and it's scooted just a little bit. Now I'm wondering if there's any sort of a slope on that floor. If they live by like a train, you know, if a train goes by and
Yeah,
sometimes does.
I don't know. I don't know. What time is it? All right. Well, I'm going to run out of time. Oh, my God. 10:18. So I'm going way slow. Okay, we got to move on. That is interesting, though. Like I said, Unexplained Mysteries is where I got that from. Number 5. I don't know if I can read this whole article because I'm going to run out of time, but I found this really interesting because my kids were asking me about sleeping, you know, like because I have to fight with them now to go to bed earlier, about getting their sleep, and I saw this article. Woman claims she hasn't slept in over 40 years. From Unexplained Mysteries. For most of us, several days without sleep would leave us barely able to function. Yet for Li Zhangying, a woman from Henan, China, the idea of falling asleep itself is nothing more than a distant memory. Now in her mid-40s, the last time she recalls sleeping was when she was a small child. While that might seem implausible, nobody has actually seen her sleep. Several of her friends and neighbors have repeatedly attempted to catch her in the act, but to no avail. Incredibly, Lee's claim of having never slept in over 40 years is actually true, well, sort of. Doctors have now determined that she suffers from a very rare condition that sees her sleeping while awake and fully conscious, meaning she can be technically asleep even while having a conversation with someone. My wife can do that. But she's laying there doing it with you. But she'll have a whole conversation with you and not remember it. The medical team used the data collected during a 48-hour brainwave monitoring session to reveal that Lee got light and moderate sleep despite neither going to bed or closing her eyes. The sleep while awake phenomenon is similar to a sleepwalking, so while she hasn't technically gone without sleep for 40 years, she doesn't need to go to sleep like a normal person. As a result, she has lived a life twice as long as the rest of us. Now, I saw a special on this with poor parents that had kids that suffered the same rare condition where they were awake in their sleep, and these parents got no sleep because their kid was literally, imagine having a 5-year-old up 24/7. Those poor parents. All right, I'm going to move on here because I'm 5 minutes left here. Check out this Unexplained Mysteries. I thought this was really odd story. They saw a YouTube video and then they got Tourette's. Psychiatrists in Germany became suspicious when dozens of patients turned up with identical symptoms. Several dozen people turned up at the office of Kristen Muller-Wahl, head of the Tourette's outpatient department at Hanover Medical School. She knew something was amiss. Her patients all exhibited identical complex tics that had been previously diagnosed as Tourette's. However, despite this, she was convinced that something else was going on. A discussion with her students would ultimately lead her to the answer. All the patients had been fans of the YouTube channel G. Witter, I'm Kampf, which documents the daily life of Jan Zimmerman, a 23-year-old German man with Tourette's who has managed to amass over 2 million subscribers. Incredibly, the patients had developed identical tics to Zimmerman while watching his videos. According to Muller-Wahl, these people were suffering from a condition known as functional movement disorder, a purely psychological ailment to contrast the neurological nature of Tourette's. For some of the patients, the symptoms vanished after this was explained to them, while others improved following a course of psychotherapy. So think about that, people. So these people developed just a twitch from watching this YouTuber. Our brains, we watch stuff. It affects us. It affects us. Look how, they're saying it's just a psychological condition. Well, psychological conditions can result in physical ailments. And look how easily this happened to people. This is a true story. It's Wired, as you see. But I found that so fascinating, and scary because, my kids watch YouTube all the time and all kinds of stuff. And you got to really wonder, how things affect them. I have to really monitor what they do watch on YouTube. It's, a plethora of nothing I want them to watch most of the time. But you think watching a guy, I've actually seen this guy's videos. He's funny. He deals with his symptoms and all that, though, with humor. It's just weird that people actually developed the same symptoms. All right, that brings me here towards the end. We're running out of time, so I want to get to this. I found out just yesterday, thanks to a friend, Jennifer, that Marcus Tempe, when you call in and you hear Marcus's voice into our show, and I met him. He was a regular caller on Heather Wade's Kingdom of Nye, and that's how he heard about my show, as being on Heather's. And he started calling into my show, and he started calling into Weird Wednesday too. And we all enjoyed his phone calls immensely. I always brightened up when you heard Marcus's voice call in to the show. And Jennifer started to get worried about him, and we hadn't heard him call into my show or Jamie and Rob's Weird Wednesday, and nobody had heard from him in a while. And she went and did a Google search and found his obit. He had died on August 28th. I feel bad because I know last time I heard from Marcus was February 7th when we had Paul Wallace on. That's the last time he called. He always would call on Skype. And, he always had a way to bring so much to the conversation. I was going to play a video. I don't think Rob's here. Is he?
He has to restart his whole computer. His mic's off.
No problem. But I had a video, and what I'll do is I'll post it to the Midwest Paranormal Facebook page and YouTube. I think his last call, I'm pretty sure, because he always called in Skype, was Paul Wallace. And he always added so much to the conversation. So many of you who do call in and in the chat room do, and that was the last time. And I was thinking about him recently before I saw this, wondering what happened. Haven't heard Marcus in a while. It'd been 5 months, and now I feel bad that I didn't look into it myself, to find out what happened to Marcus. I assume, I knew he was in poor health. Marcus had been in poor health for a number of years. He was a survivor of a heart attack. But, Heather's show, our show, Jamie and Rob's, we were his entertainment at night. He was in a hospice, laying in bed. And I hope, my prayers to his family and friends that he knew personally, but he became our family and friend. Just like I feel honored to have made so many friends through Heather Wade on the Kingdom of Nye, and many of you come here. Marcus was one of those that really was honored that calls into the show. I took it as a really big compliment because I always looked forward to his phone calls on Heather's show. Always did. And I guess what hurts the most about this, we got to wrap it up, is just when you lose a friend, so you're never going to hear that voice again. Luckily, we have recordings. I posted the other day of when I was on Kingdom of Nye. Let me remember that. The ITC call he did. But I'm going to post the last call he did in his discussion he had. And I warn you, his words out of his mouth is how upset he was that that Heather Wade wasn't coming back. He didn't think, or he wasn't sure, and he was upset. And Heather, I hope wherever she is, I haven't talked to her. Everybody's been asking me, like, I heard recently she was playing music on her website. Oh, is she coming back? I've had a number of messages. I have not spoken to Heather Wade. I'd love to. I hope whatever she's doing out there, she's healing, and she's living well. And I keep small. I keep hope that maybe one day we'll hear her voice again too. And I know Marcus and consider her a friend, considered all of you guys a friend in the night, and he will truly be missed. Godspeed, Marcus. But that's it for the World Wide Web of Weird. Our guest tonight is Nick Redfern. We're going to talk about my favorite subject tonight. It could definitely cheer me up, is to talk about time travel. He's got a new book that'll be coming out soon enough. Time Travel, the Science and Science Fiction. We're going to get into all that. I haven't read the book, like I said. It's a little bit high production-wise, so Nick tries to get me a copy. Couldn't this time. That's totally cool. I have it on my Christmas wish list. This is like a book I got to have. So we'll be talking about all that and weird things, as always, with Nick Redfern after this short commercial break.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do voices from beyond the cold case files. So we hope you join us. live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate Magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Of the second kind, physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind, contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It's a cosmic mystery crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It is called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Certificate A. Now showing at the Odeon, Leicester Square.
The international chart-topping, Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest has been described as terrifyingly real, a must-read, shocking and chilling brilliance, genuinely worrying, utterly frightening. Don't read before bed. Described as one of the spookiest writers out there, best-selling author G.L. Davies presents Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest. The true paranormal account that is shocking the world. Dare you enter? Dare you read? Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and wherever books are sold. Pray you never have to live there.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe. 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, we have returning guest Nick Redfern. And if you don't know who Nick Redfern is by now, where you've been, one of my favorite authors in the paranormal UFO cryptozoological field out there to have on the show, one of my favorite writers in this field. Nick is the author of more than 60 books, including NASA Conspiracies, For Nobody's Eyes Only, Keep Out, and The Real Men in Black. He's been on many television shows, including those on the Travel Channel, History Channel, Sci-Fi Channel, National Geographic, and is a regular guest on Coast to Coast AM. He lives in Arlington, Texas. Like I said, many people I know him from like Agent Aliens. They're like, oh, the bald guy. Yes, the bald guy, Nick Redfern. He is such an excellent writer. Pick up any book of his. You have every subject. I think he's almost about covered now. 60 books on anything in the paranormal realm or cryptid realm or UFO realm. This man has delved into it, and he does his research. One of my favorite first books I ever got to read of his was Chupacabra Road Trip. It was such a good book. Highly recommend. We've had him on for so many, and I think the last time was The Martian, talk about life on Mars. Now we get to talk about my favorite subject, time travel. Yes, he has a new book coming out, Time Travel, the Science and Science Fiction. I am so anticipating this book. It will be coming out soon, I hope, and I cannot wait to discuss this subject. And we will open up the phone lines for you guys to call in later in the show to discuss this subject with us as well. But let's go ahead and get to our guest. All right. First off, we got to get Rob in here. I saw he's in. There we go. There's Rob. Okay. And then we should have Nick on the line. How you doing tonight, Nick?
Hey, Jason. How's it going?
Doing great. Like I said, it's an honor to have you back on the show.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on again.
Yeah. So, I saw you post months ago about writing this book, Time Travel, the science and science fiction. I'm like, I think I emailed you right away. I said, when can I book you for this book? Because this is like my all-time favorite subject. You're one of my all-time favorite writers in the field. So I can't wait to have the book, and I can't wait to have you on the show to talk about the subject. And I've been counting down the days to this show and praying nothing happens that we get to do it, because I've always wanted to do a show where we get to talk about time travel. It comes up in different subjects in the paranormal field. It is Paranormal Soup. We go down a lot of rabbit holes, but never got to really delve into the subject of time travel. What got you this time? I mean, you've written about so many different subjects to go, I'm going to write a book about time travel.
Well, I guess more than anything else, excuse me, more than anything else, I would say, I've written on so many different subjects over the years. It becomes sometimes like a bit difficult to come up with some new ideas. So I think it's always important not to just go over old ground,
Yeah.
And so I sat down one day and thought, well, what's a really interesting subject, but I haven't touched on. And there's some subjects I'm not really interested in, like ghosts and things like that.
We've
That's
talked
just
about
not
that
my
before.
thing, really. But I mean, not that I don't think there's anything to it. It's just not my thing, really.
Everybody's got their cup of tea. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. But I was just thinking of ideas, and I thought, well, I've never really done time travel.
Yeah.
So I approached the publishers, Visible Ink Press, who do a lot of these books that I write for them, and I gave them like a summary of the ideas that I've got, which one of the primary things was not to just keep going over, the same old scenarios when it comes to time travel. What would happen if you murdered your grandfather in the past?
Fahrenheit paradox.
Everybody knows that kind of scenario. So I thought, if I'm going to do something like this, why not sort of make it slightly alternative, to most other time travel books, and so that everybody would know what it's all about. The book is actually called The Time Travel Book.
The Time Travel Book. I love
so
it.
It's hard to forget it, I guess.
Yeah, no, it makes it simple. And searches, like, I'm looking for a book on time travel. Oh, here we go. There's a book by Nick Redfern. That's the thing. It's like, I've got a lot of books on time travel, and I got some really good ones. But I've always enjoyed your writing style. Like, you have a very honest approach. You do your due diligence research-wise. There's not been a book of yours I've read yet that I have not loved. So I am so excited to get to read this eventually. So, I mean,
Oh, thanks.
covering this, I mean, like I was mentioning, being, kind of a paranormal, soup of these things being connected, time travel's come up, in speculation when it comes to like aliens, the Men in Black, or, it's come up in the other subjects in the paranormal field sometimes, at least when it concerns aliens, could they be time travelers? So it's come up, I'm sure, in your peripheral, at times, doing research of that possibility.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect sort of question to ask, because it demonstrates, that time travel isn't just about, jumping in the DeLorean and go and see your mum 30 years earlier,
Which is a bad idea.
Yes, it is, yeah. Unless you're really creepy.
Yeah, right? That movie, Back to the Future, they gave the uncomfortable feeling. I don't, him in the car with his mom, like, as a little kid, I even understood. I'm like, that would be so gross. That would be so gross. Sorry, Mom. She would think it's gross, but I'm just saying it's gross, Like, they really kind of pushed the limits there for 80s film, I think, on that scenario.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where you can sort of bring different concepts and ideas into time travel, which a lot of people probably won't have thought about. And I always like, for people to get new material. There's no point just going over, same old things and whatever. So I've got entries in the book on things like, could the Men in Black, who constantly just wear, these sort of out of time clothing, fedoras and like old time, like 1940s. Yeah, they got like 1940s cars and 1940s suits and fedora hats, and so I've sort of theorized on the idea: could they be like historians from the future?
Or time police.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I've tried to, go down the alternative kind of pathways.
Yeah.
And look at things that go beyond, like I said, just the same old stuff. And also look at the science surrounding this, and how much is can we say for sure, and how much is theoretical, that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And although it's not written in like an A to Z style, I've kind of done it that way so people can kind of go bit by bit throughout the history of time travel, and where it was, when it began, all the theories, and H.G. Wells, a century ago, and how does that compare with time travel as it's perceived today, right now?
I mean, 100 years ago, H.G. Wells was definitely ahead of his time. That was really the mainstay of the first fiction, of science fiction, into the idea of time travel. He wasn't the first, though. There were some others. But it is interesting to look at those takes from people who were, we didn't even have Einstein's theory of relativity yet. For these people that grasp the concept that time isn't just linear, that time you could possibly travel back in time. So what did you find in, besides H.G. Wells, did you find any, talk about any of the other early writings or history of the beginning of the talk of time travel, even in fiction?
Well, there is some early stuff, yes. But I mean, because, the concepts of time travel way back then, there was nothing that really sort of stood out massively, and I think it was only when, sort of the 1800s, when technology, started to grow and grow, that kind of crossed over with sci-fi as well.
Yeah.
But of course, with H.G. Wells, the time machine worked because it's a really good story.
Yeah.
And this sort of this traveler who sort of not really ready for what he finds. For people who might not know the story, I won't spill the beans, but he
spoiler alert, it's 100 years later.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, I think like somebody like H.G. Wells, you can either write like that or you're not able to,
Yeah.
And he was someone who, I mean, I'm not a fiction writer, and I think I would actually find that difficult,
Yeah.
to do that.
I mean, he's ahead of his time. He's talking about concepts nobody
Yeah.
in his time is talking about. I mean, he was way ahead of his time.
Yeah, you're right, and I think it was certainly the 19th century when it really started to kick off.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that there were, stories long before, actually quite a few of them, but nothing that really, stood out big time. But then, of course, when you've got something like the time machine, then it inevitably makes people think, well, could this happen in the real world? And then it really starts to kick off then.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff in the realm of the conspiracy lore of government time travel projects and stuff like that. But when I worked at Brooks Brothers a long time ago, retail store, they're an old company. They published this little book. They republished. It was a book in the 1800s. And I have it somewhere, and I got to find it. And I bought it about a man who he wrote this like in the 1800s, who was taken to the future, where he describes a lot of futuristic things, and he went there to golf. It's kind of a funny story, but it was written like in the 1800s, and a lot of the stuff he says is like, well, that kind of sounds like the future that we're in, and so I've always been fascinated with people like H.G. Wells and other people have delved into speculating about the future and time travel as a concept, because this is before they were influenced by all the science fiction now. I mean, I love, like, one of my favorite Stephen King's books that he wrote is the JFK one. I don't know if you read that, where the guy travels back. Some great concepts he touches upon in there. I mean, there's so many books I love in fiction on time travel and movies, but the old ones like H.G. Wells, like I said, they were the creators of this concept in a way. And then you get into the actual scientists who were influenced by this and are like, oh, how can we actually do it? So what does the science say on this?
Well, I mean, there's different types of science that are relative to different aspects of what we would call time travel. For example, and again, this gets into the alternative sides of things. For example, we've got people who, you have a dream one night, and then, you wake up the next day, and you realize that, something in the dream happens the next day.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, prophetic dreams, that kind of thing. Now, that type of scenario has nothing to do, with a nuts and bolts time machine, right, but it's something to do with the mind. And, we've also got things which I also talk about in the book, like deja vu. Is that like in the Matrix, like a glitch in the Matrix?
Yeah.
Or is deja vu actually a glitch in the time realm, if you like?
You got it. This is why it's fascinating me about it, because I've had those. Sorry, Nick, but I've had those experiences so much since my childhood. I would dream stuff, and they'd come exactly true into my adulthood, even. Yeah. That's why I've always been fascinated by time and time travel. And what is time? Because how would I see these things? Is my future predestined? All these questions have come into my mind for so long.
Mm. Well, that's interesting. Because I've only ever had one situation like that, and it was like that. It was like sort of a vivid dream. It actually was nothing exciting or anything.
Yeah, sometimes
like that.
It isn't.
Yeah, but it was basically sort of over and done with. But about 6 months later, I realized what I dreamed was identical to what had actually happened. Now, again, that doesn't require any science or technology involved. So in other words, the science around time travel, a lot of people do think, well, it's got to be involved with time machines,
right,
the buttons, the dates, that kind of thing. However, when you look at things like prophetic dreams, deja vu, you begin to realize that there are issues within time. When I say issues, I mean kind of like glitches, that kind of thing.
Right.
Or something goes wrong, and we realize then that time isn't sort of, from A to Z. There are significant sort of problems along the way. And so, and I think, that's one of the important things to note, namely that science and time travel, yes, do come together, but it seems to be that within the natural world, sometimes something weird will just happen, like deja vu. We've all had that at some point.
Right.
None of us can really understand how and why, but there's no time machine, there's no scientists there. You're just walking down the street and you have a funny feeling, and then after like another 10 seconds after it's gone, that kind of thing.
But
so there's a lot of ways of looking at the science of it, and some of it occurs without science as well.
Well, this is the thing, the question of what is time, is it linear? Can you, is it a tied string like in Quantum Leap, or, is it circular, or the question comes into mind when you've had these experiences, and I think lots of people have had the deja vu or dreamt something and seen it happen. If you really, have deep thoughts like Jay Candy about it, you wonder, how do I know what the future is? Is it predestined? And that's the bothersome thing to me is like, is it predestined? Can you change things? In my experiences, yes, I've actually changed something from a dream. It's a long story I've told on the show before, but I actually changed the future I saw. So it made me realize, well, it's not predestinated. It's wibbly wobbly. It can be, somehow it can be changed.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think one of the reasons why time travel does puzzle a lot of people, us too, is how can you dream of something which hasn't happened? If it hasn't happened,
right?
How can you actually sort of read into it? But we do, and so that I don't pretend to have the answers, but I do think what this does demonstrate is that the time is not what it seems to be.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, we're still trying to figure out what those issues are that allow us to see into the future. But then again, how, just the concept of something that hasn't even happened and may not happen until next Thursday.
Yeah.
How is it that you could see that before it's happened? So it's
right.
It really is, a strange phenomenon.
Well, it comes down to this: if you had a time machine, okay, and you could travel back to the past to change an instant, and you do that, and you change an instant, but the paradox is then you would never travel back in time now because that incident didn't happen. So what reason would you have to travel in time? It becomes like this loop, a paradox. And that's where, like my wife always says, time travel gives me a headache. Stop talking about it. because it's like the Chinese puzzle. You can't pull your finger out of it. The two can't exist.
Well, you're right, and I think we just need to sort of figure out how this can happen. But I think there's enough data out there, and as I said, most people have had deja vu. Now, of course, things like that, people have said, well, there's just, it's just the brain misfiring, and but why should it be all related to doing things over and over again? Why isn't it something else? Why is deja vu? Why doesn't it manifest in other ways? It doesn't. It just relates to things you've done in the past, and that's an important thing to note.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the past, I mean, I think we start going down these rabbit holes of like stories of time travel and related. You remember all these scenes could be hoaxes, of course, and we always keep that in mind. But there's fascinating stories. But you remember the story about the Catholic Church secretly having a TV that could look into the past, like see the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. You were familiar with that story?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, if it's real, I don't know. But I mean, do you think it's possible for
for
something to
put
do
it
that.
this way. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't impressed.
No, it takes a lot probably to impress you, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, this is one of the issues. You know, it's kind of like every paranormal subject, and no disrespect to people, but you know, there are a lot of people out there that have fabricated stories, whether it's UFOs, time travel, or whatever. For example, you know, the John Titor story, which I actually don't think it was designed as a hoax. I think it was designed to make people think of how people from the future would perceive us from this era.
Very brilliantly done.
Oh, it was. It was very well done. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always fascinating. I'll admit, Nick, I've been fascinated with John Titor, and I come to it as the fact that it most probably is a hoax. I think there's a lot of evidence to point to that, but the brilliance of it, the intricacy of it is like it's spectacular. I mean, there's so much to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, technically speaking, it is a hoax. However, it's not what you would call your average hoax. What this was like a social experiment, something like that.
But it I mean, in a sense, what I found really interesting about it years later is when John Titor in these posts he would do. If people aren't familiar with John Titor, look it up. You'll find plenty. But what it was like 2000. He was
about 20 years ago.
Yeah, he was posting in chat rooms as John Titor, basically, or a time traveler Titor. But he gave blueprints and plans that were like very intricate. Said GE built the time machine. Stock prices for GE go up. I don't know, but he had all these scenes. But what I found interesting was when he would talk about microsingularity wormholes and what they would do coming in the future to discover this. And a lot of that, in a sense, is very kind of did play out a little bit, as he said, when it comes to what they've done with microsingularity research and using X-rays with microsingularities to like keep them open. That they've done experiments like that have been somewhat successful. So it was like, he kind of called it. You always wondered, the people involved in this hoax were involved at, like, if they worked at, like, in Switzerland at the Collider, or if they were involved in this research.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the fascinating things about time travel. You can take it in all sorts of different directions, and sometimes it can, be a bit of a hassle because you're not really sure which is, the fiction versus the fact or whatever. But I think that more than anything else, that demonstrates there is this fascination for time travel. And I think part of it at least. I mean, not a huge part, but if you think about it, I think there's that psychological aspect of if only I could go back and change.
Second chance.
Kind of like, why didn't I ask that girl to go out? When I was 15.
Like Peggy Sue got married, get to go back and not marry your jerk Nicolas Cage husband, and then you're like, I'm still gonna end up marrying him and have the kids because the kids.
Yeah. And I think that is part of it. The idea of if only, that kind of thing.
It is for me. I mean, I've been fascinated with time travel because I just would love to go back and I love history. There was Timeless was a show they just had recently, and they only had like 2 seasons and canceled. But I love the shows that go back and hit the history. That would be so fascinating. One of the things I loved about the John Titor whole story too, that they incorporated in it with the beauty of it as a hoax, is the fact that he could say stuff about the future, but be wrong about it, according to him. Because it's the multiverse, so him traveling back into the past isn't exactly his past, and he can never actually travel back to his exact future because they're all parallel dimensions. Every single moment in time has multiple parallel versions of itself, and that was just fascinating.
Yeah, well, I mean, I talk about that in the book in relation to Roswell. There's altogether there's about 9 or 10 different theories for what happened at Roswell.
Right.
You've got the UFO crash, a time traveler, you've got secret experiments of the government, and when you look at them, they clearly cannot all be correct, you know.
Right.
But hypothetically, I mentioned, well, what if they could? What if there really were
Right.
9 versions of what happened at Roswell? You know, when time sort of goes totally out of control,
that's
and
brilliant.
possibly you're not changing time, but you're creating another version of your time.
It's like the ultimate of the Mandela effect. It'd be like the ultimate result.
Yes, exactly.
Of that.
Yeah.
Let's see how quickly the Mandela effect, as a pop culture even thing, is. You know, how's that took off so fast. You know, that just tells you the fascination people have with these ideas.
Yeah, you're right, and when you start getting into that angle of, well, you know, somebody who claims to have gone to the future, and then it's proved not true, and then you start getting into these concepts of, well, maybe it was true because there's multiple dozens of the same world. You know, there's
Possible futures. The future's always in motion, as Yoda would say.
Yeah, you've kind of got like 40 John Smiths, 40 Nick Redferns, and they're all in, you know, different realms, if you like.
Well, like I said, I loved Quantum Leap when I was a kid, and the guys that created Quantum Leap as a TV show after Quantum Leap ended, they created Sliders, and that was all about jumping from multiple parallel universes. And so these concepts are fascinating. I mean, like I said, John Titor kind of brought that together in that concept of like, well, you know, this is, you know, tells this dark kind of future, you know, that didn't play out. But, you know, as a hoax, if you know, presented wise, it's like, well, that's fine because, you know, he's from a parallel future. So he could be, you know, he came here and changed things. And that's the fact of the butterfly effect. Even if it wasn't parallel, if he traveled from the future, as soon as he's here in a sense. Every little step and action he does is changing that reality. It won't be the same future.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's sort of like a perfect example of, you know, the debate and concepts of what time travel is, you know.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like, you know, time travel, like the classic, you know, like you said, you've been explored of traveling back to kill your grandfather, and then you wouldn't exist. You couldn't travel back to kill your grandfather concept. But like you said, it's been played out. It's been, you know, the reason it's been played out so much is it's still not a concept that can totally be solved. It's like I said, it's like that puzzle that you can't get that final piece to or something, or the Chinese puzzle you can't pull your finger out of because it's a paradox. And that's where you get time travel gets really bumpy when it comes to the ideas, you know, trying to like have a thought experiment as Einstein would do, you know, of trying to figure these concepts out. Speaking of Einstein, I mean, we know, you know, general relativity, that, you know, there are some that time is bendable and mutable. You know, the fact of traveling, we can travel, traveling close to speed of light, your time clock is going to be slower than those on Earth. You know, we've documented that. So that time's not totally fixed.
No, it isn't. And I think, you know, sometimes you kind of sort of not hypothetically, but look into some stories of time travel, it's almost as if the future scenario is sort of almost like hovering around, waiting to come real. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, for example, I mean, the last couple of days, you know, 9/11, you know, 20 years later, you know, we've got all these very emotional, you know, speeches, things like this, you know, and thinking of the, you know, the people who were killed and so on. Well, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily realize that less than a year than before that, the spin-off show from the X-Files, The Lone Gunman.
You're right.
You know, one of their episodes was about a terrorist who hijacked an airplane to fly it into the towers.
Yeah.
And it's been done with using computers to aim them into the.
I remember it. I watched it.
Yeah, into the towers, and make it look like it was done by terrorists.
Yep.
And then, of course, that became like the staple kind of scenarios in some conspiracy angles, in relation to 9/11. But it's really weird, that
it's like it's in our consciousness.
It's almost like in a subconscious fashion that the events that were about to come in September were sort of floating around in the air and became part of entertainment in a horrible way in like 6, 7, 8 months before 9/11 actually happened. But the story was almost identical in many ways to the real tragic events.
And then look at all the conspiracy theories that flowed afterwards that mimic that episode.
Yeah.
And then they canceled Lone Gunman too to make it even worse. Because I watched that show, I was an X-Files fan, and I watched that show, and I remember that episode. And it probably partly influenced me because about 6 months, it was probably right after that episode, I had my cousin, I was telling him I'm really worried about a terrorist attack on this country. And I had told this to my mom and my dad and my at the time soon-to-be wife that I was really concerned about a terrorist attack on this country. And my cousin one night asked me, he's like, what do you think could happen? And I look at it as me, he's doing like game theory, as they call it, like kind of just looking at all the stuff I've been researching and talking about. And I just said, I can see him attacking the World Trade Center again because we had the previous attack. And he's like, well, you mean bombs, like planes, bombs? You can ask my cousin Phil would testify. I said this. I said, well, I could use them using planes as weapons, as bombs, crash them into buildings. And so when 9/11 happened, we all think about where we were that day. I was working in a retail store at Coach. I was retail sales associate there. They had opened the mall. Ended up they were going to close it, but I was still there. And he called me at work, like, "Oh my God, this is what you said." And like, what's going to happen next? I'm like, I'm not psychic. That wasn't psychic. I have no idea what's going to happen next. I was just shooting the bull, like just talking out my butt about what I think could happen. But was it in my subconscious? Was it from the Lone Gunman episode? I just saw it as I felt like there was something going to happen that's going to draw us back into the Middle East. Terrorist attack would get us right there. That's just how I looked at it logically.
Yeah, there's a lot of situations like that where somebody again sort of like a prophetic type of situation, but where it's more in the subconscious and you're perceiving that you're picking up ideas but they may actually, be some like an idea that's floating around rather than one that you're in a simplistic way. But but it's not you that's actually creating this scenario.
Right.
In your mind, it's
coming
literally
subconscious.
It's in the subconscious and it's in the air.
Yeah.
And but when you read, for people who haven't watched the Lone Gunman episode, I mean it's beyond eerie, the concepts and the story, and with it just being like about 8 months, I think it was before 9/11.
It had to been. It was like 6 months. Me and my cousin figured out before 9/11 that we had this conversation one night, and it really freaked him out. Like, because I've been talking about this, and he's like, "What's going to happen next?" I'm like, I have no idea. We're going to go to war to Middle East. That's about all I can say. I don't know. I'm not psychic, and it makes. Then I always wondered about like where did that come from for me? Because I just remember just spewing all this stuff out. And it wasn't, like I said, that was the details I gave, like what it came out of me was my cousin. But I was warning people I knew privately that something's coming. I just a feeling, like you said, maybe it was in the air. Look at the wreck of the Titanic, and then there's the fictional book before it of the Titan. The
that's
similarities.
right. Yeah, the Titan. Yeah, that's a perfect example. Yeah, that was like looking through a mirror.
Yeah. But what I was fascinated about these instances, I call them like shatter points in history. That's a Star Wars reference for people out there, Shatterpoint with Mace Windu. But there's like, I fell in love with this fascination of there's points in history, and Doctor Who covers this too. We get into the fiction and all that, that are fixed points in time because they're so immense. They're scars on what happens next. They're if 9/11 never happened, the Titanic never happened, things would be, you're talking more people alive that shouldn't have been. You're talking about things would, like for Titanic, it would change probably the safety standards for sure would still be poor for a while until another boat sank. But for the 9/11, that, I mean, we went to war for 20 years. I mean, it's so much the Patriot Act that I totally hate. All these things that happen after that. If that didn't happen, then this reality we'd be in right now would be completely, way drastically changed. So you're killing a billion butterflies. If you change that. Because they talk about just the simplest things, and the concept of time travel, if you change, could really alter reality. But there's the big things in time that must weigh heavier, and then we can almost feel the approach of them.
Yeah, you're right, and again, that demonstrates the sort of sheer bizarreness of everything, really. In relation to time travel, it's not as black and white as people think it is. It's either real or it isn't. It's far beyond that. I mean, like, for example, I mentioned things like the Men in Black earlier.
Right.
I mean, but there's other aspects. I mean, for example, with the famous Rendlesham Forest UFO
yes,
event.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, where you've got one of the primary guys involved, Jim Peniston. He said that the entities that he saw in the woods said basically they come back from the future.
It was from the code, wasn't it? He put it when he put his hand. It was the coding.
Yeah, binary code. Yeah, to try and save the future because the future's in an evolutionary decline. So you've got fascinating stories like that. The idea that the future in some respects is already there, but we don't see it until they come to our time, I suppose, and tell us what happens in the future, which is even
a possible future, like they're traveling back.
Right,
that's the concept. It's hard. Like my wife says, it gives me a headache. Stop talking about it. Because I try to explain these concepts, and she loves all the science fiction stuff as much as I do. So I love being married to her for 18 years. We can share these things. We watched Timeless. She was heartbroken when they canceled that show recently. We love all this stuff. We love the time travel, but she says it gives her headaches. For me, I can't stop thinking about it. And this concept of predestination or parallel universe, it's like it's trying to explain it to people. It's just like whew, over their heads sometimes.
Yeah, I mean even having sort of written this book and done all the research, your head is still kind of spinning around. I mean, can it really be all these different aspects of time travel? Could there be multiple different ways of, actually going through time, like a literal time machine? Okay.
And the question comes up: is there time travelers right now going back in the past and changing things right now? That's the whole Mandela effect, sometimes connected theory there. That's why we're experiencing these odd, I don't know what you want to call them, differences in what people's opinions of the past are, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's sort of a fascinating angle, when you think you were absolutely sure you read something in a newspaper, and I mean, a perfect example of this one, you probably know this one as well, though, is the story of the missing Thunderbird photograph. You know that story?
Yeah, it's very familiar.
Yeah.
I'm like I've heard this.
Yeah, well, basically, a little bit more than 100 years ago, when supposedly a photograph was taken of like this strange, huge bird, like a thunderbird, and supposedly a lot of pictures were taken. One was taken, but a lot of the picture was sort of spread here and there in different magazines. And now it cannot be found anywhere.
Yes, I've heard of
Dozens of people swore they saw it, and they looked, and nobody can find it. And that's almost that kind of, situation where you read about it, you saw it, and no one can find it, period, ever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my wife is, I'm trying to remember what her Mandela effect is. She's told me several times, and I think it has to do with a house that doesn't exist. I mean, like she has a memory of a house being there. It's not there. that kind of deal. And I've heard other people like that. I mean, even, I know you don't get into the ghost thing, but I mean, a lot of times people wonder if some of the, you talk about residual hauntings or people seeing, there's famous cases of people walking into a town that is dated and the people are dated and everything seems a bit off. And then they go back to that town. It's not there anymore. And they found out it used to be this town that existed. It's not there anymore. They had to have traveled in time.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, you got the famous story from Versailles, two women go to
that's what I'm
Versailles,
thinking
France. Yeah, and everything looks different. And now, then again, that has no involvement with technicians and scientists trying to. No, this is just like something that randomly happened, and then it just went back to normal again. So you have to wonder how is time being manipulated, and we're clearly seeing some examples where it undeniably is happening at random, particularly like the Versailles story.
I mean, you talk about missing 411. Some people expected some people falling through portals to time and disappeared in time. I mean, there's a famous case. I'm trying to remember now. Wish I had had the notes on this one. Where was it? Was it New York? I can't remember. It's like, I want to say it's early 1900s where a man was found hit by a car and had ID. Now it could be, the urban myth, but these stories of people dropping in, they're out of time. There's a number of them.
Yeah, and I think, when you put all that together, we're talking about at least sort of 5 or 6 different ways of potentially moving through time, which is pretty amazing if you think about all these different ways that we've talked about,
Oh, yeah.
It isn't like, towards the end of the book, I talk about how, the idea of, it's all going to be like DeLoreans or whatever. It's not, it's, in fact, that kind of scenario is in the absolute minority. Everything else, for the most part, and the really important stories that I've come across, really were random events that nobody really understood how it happened.
Where time slipped,
Yeah.
Like those two women seeing that incident. There's other people that have, and some people, you think that whole town's a ghost town that just appeared to you? No, that seems like time broke for those two women. And there's other accounts of this, people's, I mean, like I said, houses that appear that aren't there, basically look fully solid. Is it a ghost house? Does a house have a soul to be a ghost? No, that's time. Yeah, that's what I've always thought. It's a flux in time. Time is not. I love the Doctor Who wibbly wobbly. It might wobble at times, in certain areas. I mean, look at there's the case of the guy. I should have had all these out. The Bermuda Triangle case. Now, most people look at that as like he portaled through warp speed wise in his plane, and he made a flight sooner than he should have. He had plenty of gas left over. I'm trying to think of the case. I'm sure you've heard of it. But where he flew through a storm, there was a tunnel that appeared, and he ended up being at his location way earlier than he should have been. That in a sense is time travel in his sense, because it should have taken him a lot longer to get there.
Well, funnily enough, John Keel, who wrote the Mothman prophecies, well, he had an experience like that when he was doing a late-night road trip. And then he had these prophetic dreams. That's why the book's called The Mothman Prophecies. Right. Because there was a lot of weird stuff going on at Point Pleasant where the Mothman was
predicting
seen.
the future.
A lot of stuff was future-based.
Yeah.
And, he ended up with the collapse of the Silver Bridge, as it's called, in Point Pleasant, and Keel had these eerie sort of disturbing feelings that something was on the horizon, but he couldn't figure what it was, and that's another example of something sort of in the air. People know something's going on, it's coming, but they're just not sure exactly what it is they're seeing.
It's like a weight on time. You know, like
Yeah.
like you feel or like a wave, like that's coming in. It's like the wave before the tsunami or something of time, and people are feeling it. And I pay attention to that on social media when people are like, "I feel like something's coming." If I see a bunch of those posts, then I might feel like something's coming, you know. But I had that feeling before 9/11. I had that feeling so strongly. I was telling everybody about it. So then after it happened, I had a lot of people looking at me really weird. I lost some friends actually over it. They just thought they just didn't want to talk about it because I had been talking about it before it happened. And I'm like I said, I didn't feel like I was psychic. That was to me, like I call it game theory. You know, I was just like theorizing out like what's going to happen, you know, on a national security level, basically what's happening in this country and threats coming. And now I wonder, you know, I just was feeling the weight of time.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the important, significant things about all this is that in some respects it shows that reality isn't what it seems to be. You know, it's like we seem to understand the nature of the planets and the linear sort of wave, if you like, of time, and yet, you know, we're not really seeing half of it at all, really. And again, you know, you can make these connections with things like in the UFO subjects and things like the Philadelphia experiment.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the attempt to make a warship invisible during the Second World War, and the rumours flying around, very controversial, admittedly, claims of time travel in relation to that.
Yeah, yeah, and then you get into the whole Montauk Project connection to that too. Yeah. Who was the name? Was the name of the guy who really kind of pushed the whole? Afterwards,
Al Bielek.
Al Bielek is his name. I know he's been passed on for several years, but I remember listening to him on Art Bell. I mean, Art Bell's favorite subject was time travel. And you know, him going into it seemed completely preposterous and crazy, but it drew me in.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the whole Al Bielek, Philadelphia experiment, Montauk. I mean, that is sort of almost become sort of, a phenomenon all on its own.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got sort of a following in the same way. You know, there's people who investigate the JFK assassination still. It's like it's one of these things that really never goes away.
Yeah. What is your thoughts on the Al Bielek, story?
Well, the problem I have with it is that, for me, it's the original story, I should say, of the Philadelphia experiment was that supposedly the ship briefly went invisible and a lot of the crew were killed or went mad.
Right.
But it's actually not. All the stuff about time travel did not start until the 1980s. People think the time travel thing started when the rumors started in the 40s. They didn't.
No,
people were talking about invisibility back at the 40s. Nobody was talking about time travel until the 1980s, and that's one of the things that makes me be very suspicious about this. The idea that it's just popped up in the last 20 years. And some of the stories, are frankly way over the top. But do I think something happened out in the Philadelphia port? Yes, I do. I think they were dabbling with something weird. But I think there have been people over the years who've sort of jumped onto the real story and significantly altered the story to fit their own little scenario.
Well, Al Bielek, I mean, his story gets out of like he was basically Montauk Project took him and put him in another body, and it gets way out there. I mean, way out there. I mean, and you would say, okay, if they got this kind of technology, all bets are off. I mean, you're talking about being able to manipulate or bend time with just huge amounts of electricity. That's basically what they're saying.
I mean, personally, I don't buy into that.
Yeah.
However, what I would say is that to try and understand it, you really have to sort of at least read it to try and figure out, what is going on. And again, that's one of the, the big problems with it. We're dealing with things that are so out there that a lot of people won't deal with it,
Yeah.
But when you get rid of the over-the-top stuff, the lies, the disinformation, the fantasy, get rid of all of that. I am 100% sure that there still is something that has at its heart the manipulation, whether deliberately or accidentally, of time, but we just don't get it. We just don't understand how it actually takes place. And that's what we need to do. We need to find how and why that happens and how we can master it.
Well, one of the stories too. I mean, when you talk about governments and that, hiding UFO technology. If time travel is a technology that could be invented, or we've tapped into it somehow secretly,
Yeah.
What do we know? What are we doing? Are we time traveling? I mean, look, even like the Nazis are accused of inventing time travel with the Wonder Weapon. The bell, and then the people say that Kecksburg could have been the bell traveling into the future.
Oh yeah.
We've heard that story. I do find it fascinating. It's speculation, all of it. But it is fascinating idea that maybe the Kecksburg incident was the Nazi bell, and the lead scientist who did disappear took off in the Nazi bell and ended up in the 1960s. It's wonder.
Yeah, I mean,
and then our government would have that
story.
technology because we obviously recovered it.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's so many angles and theories. I mean, another one I talk about in the book, which and again to sort of bring in an alternative scenario that a lot of people probably haven't thought about, is the doppelganger angle. People who think they've seen a doppelganger mean basically, we're talking about somebody who looks just like you. And so I've sort of theorized, what if doppelgangers may not be just somebody like you?
Right.
Maybe you get to see a brief look of how you may have lived or do live in another time realm.
A parallel universe,
And that's what you're actually seeing. You're seeing a doppelganger of yourself from another time realm. So.
I mean, we've had guests on that talk about make your future. Your thoughts will influence your future. I'm like, well, we're all in the same future together, but they're saying you'll jump into a different timeline. I've heard this. I've guests that talk about that. And my dad used to have people tell him he worked as a security alarm guy installer, and he would show up at locations like, you were here already. He's like, no, it was the first time I walked into the door. People more than once would say they'd seen my dad walk in before or talk to him. He would get this all the time. And he always said he's got a doppelganger out there. So, you wonder if it's a slip in the matrix of parallel universes. We got to go to commercial break, though, Nick. And we'll open up the phone lines when we come back, guys. Call in, ask your questions of our guest, Nick Redfern. Oh, that's the wrong thing. I'm hitting the wrong button. I am way off. There we go. Call in tonight, join the conversation, ask your questions about Nick Redfern's new book, Time Travel, The Science and Science Fiction. I love this topic so much, as you can tell. I got to read his book, but I can talk about all this stuff all night long. Time goes by fast, but we will take your phone calls when we come back from the short commercial break.
Into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Can John Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign-up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.paranormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope.
That'll do. Hello, I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift, a refreshing and fun read. I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
Edgar Allan Poe wrote Spirits of the Dead with a pen dipped in warm blood. You will see the ultimate in terror with this important all-star cast. Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda in Edgar Allan Poe's Spirits of the Dead. Only Poe's demented genius could bring to the screen such horror and evil. Spirits of the Dead stars Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda. Directed by three masters of the cinema, Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. Spirits of the Dead is an adventure in terror beyond your wildest nightmares. Spirits of the Dead in color is rated R.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419. Or by Skype caller ID OOJBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is Nick Redfern. He is coming out with a new book called Time Travel, the science and science fiction, or the time travel book, as he's calling it. We lost Rob and we lost Jamie. Jamie had to go for emergency. Rob is trying to see if he could come back on. I was hoping to get Rob on to see if we could use his phone line, too, tonight, because when I got a guest on the one phone line, it only leads me to two. So you should be able to call in tonight at 219-230-4444 or Skype ID OOJBland00. Those are the two ways to call in. Ignore the other two because that line is taken up with Nick. But join the conversation. We will miss Marcus's calls. I think about him tonight. I'm sure he would have had some fascinating things to add to the discussion. But I enjoy all your guys' calls. So join the conversation tonight, but let's go ahead and get back to our guest. You still there with me, Nick?
Yeah.
So, I have to bring this up. I get made fun of for liking some of the movies I do from the 80s and that. And this is one Art Bell loved because, he loved time travel. But I shared the fascination with this movie as a kid. I don't know many other kids who did, but I did. Was Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeves and the really hot, still hot Jane Seymour.
Yeah, I've seen that one, yeah.
Oh, but what always fascinated me about when I was a kid with that movie is the fact that his character, if anybody's never seen it, his character falls in love with a woman from the past. And like he goes to a guy to figure out, like, he's drawn to her and he wants to know why. And he goes to a guy who tells him of an experience where he basically pushed himself back in time by mimicking everything from that time period and like focusing on mental will. And that's what he does. He rents a room at Mackinac Island in the hotel and period, clothes, everything. He has to have everything that period, and he mentally focuses for days or whatever to push himself back in time. And that idea fascinates me. That because everybody thinks of a time machine. A machine will take you back in time, but the idea of traveling, physically, like, or through consciousness or whatever, to travel back in time is just something that I've always been fascinated by. Have you done any research on people who say they were able to? I've had people, I've seen people say they were able to travel time consciously.
The only, or the closest, I should say, the closest thing I could think of would be sort of like prophetic dreams and that kind of scenario, where you're actually not, going anywhere in a machine or in a craft or anything like that at all, but somehow, your essence, your soul, whatever you want to call it, has been able to surf time and come back again as well. That's about the closest. But I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that movie because you can actually, sort of, if you look at a lot of time travel novels and particularly movies, as well as being entertaining, they're also, make you think as well. Right. Some of them, like for example, I don't know if you've seen the original time machine.
Yeah.
Movie, which is one of my favorites.
Me too.
Rod Taylor. That's a really good one.
Oh, God. It still holds up to the test of time.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
it does,
the remake they made was god awful. God awful. The time machine. It was horrible. Like, I'd rather watch the original. Thank you.
Yeah, the original. I mean, despite the fact that the special effects are 1960 era special effects, but it is a really good one.
I remember watching it as a kid when he turned the time machine on and he'd watch all the future stuff happen around him and all that stuff. That to me, that movie was ahead of its time with the book that was ahead of its time when it comes to these concepts. Because even in science fiction, it covered it. There's some Twilight Zone episodes and all that, but the idea of time travel. Still, it was in infancy in the modern age. People trying to figure it out, and with science and everything. And it's interesting to see 1950s take on time travel to like something like Interstellar and other movies like Back to the Future's time travel. Like how
But,
it's grown,
yeah, I mean,
in concept.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ideas, that science fiction, really kind of. I mean, a classic example would be like Doctor Who.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
big fan.
They're good shows, and they're sort of well thought out, and they've got that kind of what if scenario.
It's like in Star Trek too. Star Trek had a number of really good episodes on time travel. They had the ancient doorway they could walk through and travel back in time on this mysterious planet. You remember I can't remember the name of the episode. Did you get? But like Kirk and Spock go back to save a mad Dr. McCoy who got drugged up by accident, goes crazy and jumps through the portal of time, and they got to go back and save him because he changed the future. One thing, he saved a woman's life, and they had to let her die to keep their future. And that's what I always loved about Star Trek. They really, from the original series to Next Generation, like make you think, and play out the drama of it. But like imagine traveling in time, and you want to go back home, especially if your home is the Star Trek universe. You got replicators and all these nice stuff. You want that future, right? And you go back in time, actually screw up, save somebody's life, and it changes it. It changes everything. Now there's Armageddon or Doom, and you have to let this woman die to save your future.
Yeah, and another one that had an interesting scenario. You mentioned earlier that the Stephen King novel, 11/24/63.
Yeah, I love that. I've read that book like 3 times.
Have you really? Well, I actually have never read the book, but
should.
I did watch it's either a
the
movie
Hulu.
or it was like...
They did a miniseries with James Franco.
Yeah. Well, what interested me about that, or the scenario, was that time itself prevented him.
Isn't that so fascinating? It's even better in the book, Nick. You really got to read the book. There's so much. It was a good miniseries. Don't get me wrong. I think they did as best they could with the miniseries. It's never ever going to be as good as the book. So I did like the miniseries, but the book, oh my God, it really gets into this. The main character, really starts to like wonder: is time like trying to stop me? Because of all these horrible things that happen, and him trying to like change time before he even tries to change JFK. Like in the book, they get into more detail about him having to change this one person's life by stopping his father from like killing like half his family. And he had, so anybody who hasn't read the book or seen the miniseries, this guy finds there's a, what is it, like a burger shop that has in their closet this doorway that takes you back to the same day in 59, I think. So we're talking a few years before the JFK assassination, but it takes you back to the same day. And if you go back through the door, back to your time, whatever you changed while you're back there now affects that time when you come back. But if you go back into the door, you go back to that same day in 1959, everything resets, and so does your future. It was really, I just loved that concept. It was just fascinating exploring. Stephen King's, of course, brilliant at exploring it. And, I don't want to give it spoil it for people about it, but of course the whole mission this guy sent on by this guy who owns the burger shop is to stop JFK and stop the Vietnam War. Which, Stephen King goes with the whole, Oswald did it thing, which bothered some people. It didn't bother me. I still love the book. It's the same as Quantum Leap did that. I don't know if you ever watched Quantum Leap, the TV show, but I was a huge fan of the TV show. I was heartbroken when they ended it, and they ended it, like, horribly, in my opinion. And I there's talks of it coming back one day. I don't know. But I grew up on that show. And there was, towards the end of their last seasons that they did the whole JFK thing, and, they're telling him he's there to stop the JFK assassination. But, of course, Sam Beckett was never there to change anything major in history. He was always just changing little things in people's lives, well, major things in people's lives, but not any major historical events. So it almost comes down to where he has to actually pull the trigger and be Oswald and like shoot JFK at the end of that episode. I just thought all these concepts, JFK again, that's like a scar in time, a major event. There's a lot of different time travel stuff that's covered JFK, but Stephen King wasn't the first. But I really highly recommend that novel.
Yeah, as I said, I never watched never read the novel. It was a bit daunting when I read it that it was like 600 pages.
It is. It's a big book, but it really sucks you in, Nick. It really sucks you in. It's well written.
To read it.
And it's well worth it on the subject of time travel, because Stephen King, I think, wanted to play in that universe quite a bit, and his method of doing it isn't, like it said, a time machine. It's just this random somehow door that appears in this guy's closet of his burger shop. People are like, the beginning of the story, you find out like the burger shop sells these hamburgers for really cheap prices. There's no way you can get beef that cheap. Well, it's because he goes back to the same day in 1959, orders the same hamburger. And brings it back. So people are eating the same 1959 hamburger over and over and over again.
Now, one that I thought was done well was 12 Monkeys.
Yes,
I think that was
I saw that in the theater.
That was like done in a good, solid, situation where that came across sort of plausible,
Yeah. Oh, no, I love 12 Monkeys. I remember going to see that in the movie theater. And now, it seems slightly pathetic because the whole concept in 12 Monkeys, it was a virus that destroyed society and everybody had to go live underground. And here we are, And he couldn't change the future, remember? Like everything he was doing, he still never changed the future.
Yeah, that's right.
Not to spoil it for people, but these are older movies. You should have seen them by now. But spoiler alerts tonight on time travel movies. Sorry, guys. But yeah, Bruce Willis's character could not change that future, no matter what way he was trying. He was completely connected to it, to the future outcome. And you find out, he witnessed the whole thing as a child, and he basically runs into himself. Again, spoiler alert. Sorry, but one of my absolute favorite movies. TV show didn't get through. I didn't care for, but the movie, awesome.
And we can't forget Bill and Ted.
Oh yeah, I got that in one of my commercial reels. Oh yeah, I love Bill and Ted. Did you see the third one that they made?
No, I haven't seen it. I
It's
didn't
hilarious.
know if it was any good or not.
It was hilarious. I enjoyed it. My kids enjoyed it because they watched the other two. They love time travel stuff. They love Bill and Ted, those movies, even though they're way old for them, those movies. They still enjoyed it. They loved it. And we watched the third movie they made with those guys. It was hilarious.
Was it really? I mean, everybody likes the first two, but I mean, I thought this is going to be garbage, like 20 years on or whatever, 30 years on.
It was funny.
But,
I enjoyed it. I try to not get too super film critic on stuff because I do have that in me. I went to Columbia for film, so. But with movies like that, Bill and Ted's not meant to be a masterpiece. It's meant to be a good time and have a laugh, and that's what they did. It was an indie really movie. They kind of put that together through getting funding from people. So, I think Keanu Reeves put a lot of his own money into getting it produced, too. So it was hilarious. George Carlin is the only missing factor in that. Do you really miss?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I was fascinated with that movie as a kid. I tried to win a sweepstake to win the booth. You remember the phone booth, There was a free giveaway from the cereal for the sweepstakes. And I was sending them all in. My mom's like, "You're not going to win that, so whatever. But if you do, what are we going to do with it? Where are we going to put that phone booth?" I'm like, "I don't care. It'll be in my bedroom." Along with the TARDIS, and that's how I was as a kid. I was always fascinated by time travel. So anything time travel, I watched or I ate up. I've seen almost all. I mean, I would watch the reruns of the Time Tunnel. You remember the 1960s show? The Time Tunnel. It came out before I was born, but they had it on Sci-Fi Channel. I remember back in the day, they'd play reruns of it, and I would watch it. I thought it was brilliant for 1960s TV show.
Yeah, I remember that one when I was a kid. Yeah.
The Time Tunnel. These guys would go down this swirling thing, like this tunnel, and then they'd be there, and then people can communicate with them from the future. One of the cases too. We talk about all these stories and stuff. You talk about Men in Black and their connection. That I've always wondered is time travel related, and there's no way to know. It's all speculation. And I'm trying to think of the name of the case, but it's the astronaut in the picture. You know what I'm talking about? England, I think it was. The guy's taking a picture of his daughter, and you see the guy in the astronaut suit behind her.
Oh yeah,
and then the Men in Black are involved in that one too.
Yeah, you're right, and that's why I think some of the sort of anomalies, if you like the Men in Black and the Women in Black. when I talk about the women in black, that film footage outside when they were just promoting the Charlie Chaplin movie.
Oh yeah,
in
that's another one.
1928, I think it was. Yeah, and that was like a huge story for weeks and weeks. Even in the mainstream media.
I just realized my phone line was shut down, so those just trying to call in. I just checked, I'm not getting calls. I realized I missed a bunch of calls because I forgot to hit do not disturb on this one because I usually don't have that on. Let me see if I can get Zach back because he definitely, I know. Oh, we got an incoming sideline call. Let me see if I can get this call. Called you. Let me call this one. Zach is another one. I got to get off. Just give me 1 second. I want to see if I can get these guys. They're trying to call in. I feel awful. Tonight. I'm totally off my game. Let's see. We got 860 area code. Hello. You tried calling in?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. This is Azariana.
Hey, Azariana.
How you doing?
Doing good.
I had a couple of comments and maybe a question for your guest.
Yeah.
Supernatural had a show one time.
I thought about this too.
Yeah, where they, whatever they were doing, they found out that all the people involved in their case were all survivors of the Titanic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're relatives, and the Titanic never sank and the whole thing. And unfortunately, they had to.
Yeah, it's that awful choice.
Yeah. So that was part of my question. If you can time travel, and you want to change history because of wherever you are, is it right? Should you? And how would it affect you when you went back to your time?
Well, that's actually a good question. Is it right? Should we do this or that? It's an interesting concept. That you could, try and do something for the right reason, but you end up creating a complete disaster. You know. So I think if we are able to sort of one day control time travel, then we have to be very careful as to what we do and how we do it. And could we end up just totally changing the past by trying to alter the future, if you like, or the present? Now, of course, these are all sort of concepts, really, but they're important concepts if we actually one day do get to do that, to actually achieve time travel. There'll be a huge number of issues. Some of them, not in our favor, possibly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, what I'm thinking, like with all the atrocities that we've had, whether they be catastrophes or World War II or whatever, already what's going to happen. And, if you could prevent it, I think it would be overwhelming if you could not prevent it or do something to stop it. But
yeah,
I just wonder about that,
I think it's on the number one time travel question, probably.
Yeah, it may well be. Yeah. We could be seeing one scenario where, we go back in time, and we try and change something, but as we sort of touched on briefly earlier, maybe we're not able to change it.
Right.
Something within like the laws of nature, if you like, prevent us from actually, maybe we can go through time, but when it comes to specifically altering things and significant things, maybe nature has its way of cutting us off, and preventing that from happening.
Yeah. And my last question is, there was a movie, I don't know, I forget the name of it, but there was something where they time traveled and some guy brought a butterfly back or something, and it messed up when they came back, and they had to go back and put this butterfly carcass, you know.
It's the butterfly.
With
the butterfly effect. Was it that one?
Well, that one didn't have a butterfly like specifically in
No.
it. No. I'm trying to think
They
of
were
what
the
movie she's talking
dinosaur
about.
hunters or something.
Huh.
I forget. Some English girl and whatever. I forget the name of it.
Huh. They're really
But,
playing out the butterfly effect theory in that movie, obviously.
Yeah,
I'm trying
yeah.
to wonder what
But
movie
that's all I wanted to, that I just have questions with time travel and,
Oh, yeah.
I mean.
Oh,
you
well,
know.
thanks for the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Zuriana.
Well, thank you, and you have a great night.
You too.
You have a great
You too.
night.
See if I can get Zach on. He was trying to call in, and usually he's on Skype. Now, one movie I was trying to think of. Oh, somebody else might be trying to call in here. Got another call. Hold on. There was a movie, and I can't think of the name of it. Because, if time travel got invented and we could use it, one of the things is tourism, And in this movie, was it Jeff Daniels? I believe it was. It's like a small town, and these weird people show up. He has like a bed and breakfast, I think, or something like that. And there's these weird people stay, and they turn out to be time travelers, and they're tourists. They're about ready to witness a big event. The big event is a big meteor that comes and destroys their whole town, kills a ton of people. And Jeff Daniels, of course, figures this out and then tries to find a way to warn people, gets his hands on one of their time travel devices, I think, too, and does stuff. I hadn't seen it in years, but I always found it fascinating. If the time travel existed, or would it exist in the future, would it end up being like a tourism thing? You go back, see the days. You can't change anything, and that's what it is. These people are like, we can't help you. We can't stop this event or save lives because it'll change our future.
Yeah, and that's we've got so many questions, when it comes to time travel, than we do answers,
Like I said, Star Trek covered it in so many different ways that I've been a huge fan. I remember there's a good one with the guy who played Max Headroom. I can't think of his name right now. In Star Trek The Next Generation, where he comes to them acting like he's from the future because he has a time travel machine. And he's actually from the past. He stole a time travel machine. He was collecting future items. But the temptation, if a machine could be created, is to go back and witness these things. And of course, the ultimate temptation is what to change. But for the time traveler, you change something, you screwed the pooch on going back to your own future. That's the ultimate conundrum of time travel. We got
one that I liked. Yeah. One I liked. I forget the name of the title of the movie, but it starred Chris Christopherson, and it was basically about time travelers in the future, and they were snatching people out of planes that were about to crash.
Yes, that's a great movie. Oh, what is that movie? Oh, I know that movie. Yes, that's such a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that one they.
You really have to read that. watch that one carefully.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen that one. I forgot about that one, but that was such a good movie because, they're basically the plane crash happens, all these people die, so the time travelers need people in the future, so they take the people that wouldn't be missed because they are killed in a plane crash, wouldn't alter their timeline, and then things go wrong, of course. We got Zach on the line. Sorry, Zach, I had the phone line on Do Not Disturb, and I forgot to take it off. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, brother. How was your Labor Day?
It was great. I spent most of the day helping my wife in the yard with her pool and threw my knee out. But hey, otherwise it was great.
I hear you, man. All right, so I just have two questions over for tonight. Mr. Redfern, long time no see. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good, thanks.
So my first question goes back really to it happened in Back to the Future, but also the one movie that really comes to mind for me for time travel would be X-Men Days of Future Past, where Wolverine, he goes into the past to prevent this assassination, but what it does, though, in the end, is that it changes really his timeline.
Right.
But really, he's the only one that remembers, events from the previous timeline. Everything else is just remaining stagnant in their own, parallel timeline. My question is, if someone were to be able to go back in time and they happen to change it for whatever it is, would they still retain the memories of what they had in their past life, or whenever they got back, would the universe somehow correct itself to where, they would also just forget maybe memories of their own past timeline, and they would regain new memories, I guess you can say?
Well, I mean, in some cases, we know that people do have memories of time travel. I mean, a perfect example is the one we mentioned earlier, the two women in Versailles, France.
Yeah.
They came out of this sort of like a multiple, sort of states of time, and but when they came out of it, they were back in their regular realm, and they did not, lose the memory of what happened. So I think, it's hard to say. It may not be, like I said, like everything's linear with time travel. It may be completely different. But certainly in that case, that does demonstrate that people don't lose the memories of whatever the event was that they found themselves in the middle of.
Okay. And then my second question, it goes back to the Future Part 2, where Marty buys the almanac that gives like all the different sports statistics of which teams win from like 1950 all the way to 2000. And really that sets in the whole motion for the whole events in the movie. Hypothetically, if someone were to be able to use time travel as a means to profit off of it or anything like that. I'm not saying I would. I'm just saying it as a hypothetical scenario.
I would.
But
I would. I'd be down at the gas station for
Get that lotto ticket.
Next week's lottery numbers.
Right? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking for next week's Powerball numbers, exactly. But my question is that would the universe have like a negative reaction though to somebody doing that? Why or why not?
But yeah, that's an interesting concept. The idea that, doing things out of the normal and changing things significantly may actually result in, the line, if you like, preventing it from happening. And that is a genuinely intriguing situation or scenario. The idea that, maybe a minor change in time wouldn't be noticed. Something that's really big or something that could alter, history, maybe, it actually we would be prevented. That's a really interesting angle to think about that you may not be allowed to do it.
Okay, cool. Well, those are all the questions that I had. Thank you so much, Nick. It's always a pleasure seeing you, my friend. And I love hearing everything that you're saying, bro. Keep up the great work.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Zach. You have a great night.
Have a great night, everybody. And before I go, rest in peace, Marcus. Love you, brother.
All right, man. Thank you. What was I going to say? Oh, Steve had it, Millennium. That was the name. I think the name of that movie.
Oh, that's right, Millennium.
Yeah. It was a really good movie too. I haven't seen that so long. Now that's going to be a movie I have to look up and watch again. Now that I think of it, I'm glad you brought that one up. There's so many good ones. I always found you were talking about Bill and Ted. I thought they were full of paradoxes. They would do the oh dude, let's we need to break these guys out of jail, so we're gonna later on get in the time machine, come back, get us the stuff we need to pull off this, they can break everybody out. And they go into the police station and they got like all this stuff they've left there for them and set up ahead of time. Like they just throw the paradoxes right out the window and just do it. That's what I always loved about Bill and Ted.
That both of those are really good movies.
Oh yeah. The wibbly wobbly time reference from Doctor Who is another great. I mean, Doctor Who's all about time travel, but a lot of those, they get into the aliens and all kinds of stuff, Yeah, but there's great episodes that focus primarily on the aspects of time travel, and that one was the Blink episode. You remember the Weeping Angels? I don't know if you ever saw that. And he has to send a message like through time, because he ends up getting stuck in the 1960s, and he has a guy, he's like gives him the tip, like start a VHS company. VHS is where it's going to be at, or start getting the media or whatever, so he can make these VHS tapes where he like there's like 18 movies where he has like a little piece of the message that he has to send through time. They have to like put together from like these 18 movies from this one girl's collection. He knew she had this movie collection. And so, they put it all together. It's fascinating. It's just a great episode. Besides the creation of the Weeping Angels in it as Doctor Who fans, who like zap you back in time. The idea of like, giving somebody like, hey, you want, I'll help you out. Because this another person actually gets trapped back in time, but he's like, here, do this, make this company, like start this so you can give this message, but you're going to make a lot of money too. The profit, for people to make money time traveling would be a thing. There's another good movie when I mentioned Time Police is Time Cop with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Did you ever see that one?
I never saw that one.
Yeah, that's got some interest. It's a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, but don't knock it. Don't knock the Van Damme. He in that they have to police time, so they in the future they know about time travel. And they have to police people that are going back and trying to like profit off of time travel, like going back in the past and making stocks and all that stuff. It's fascinating. But one of those things where the concept in that is about like meeting yourself. You couldn't the worst thing you could do is like to meet yourself and touch yourself. Like it create like this, like the one guy ends up doing it. I don't give it totally away. Ends up turning into a big blobby mess on the floor. What would happen? That's the concept of yourself. Did time travel and even meet yourself? How dangerous could that be? What kind of paradox that would cause?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's the. I guess really that's at the heart of time travel is that word paradox.
Yeah, that's the heart. That's
it sums it up really.
Yeah, and there's multiple different ways of creating paradox. I mean, you look at the Back to the Future movies, like Zach was bringing up Back to the Future 2 with the whole sports book thing, and they create this alternate reality. Okay, let's talk about that. They create this alternate reality. If you haven't seen Back to the Future, spoilers. Should have seen it by now. And Biff goes back in time. An old Biff goes back in time, gives a young Biff the book, so he can go bet. Changes this whole like universe, and very Trump-like Biff is like control of everything. Little there's a whole thing about I don't know if you've seen the whole thing about Back to the Future predicting the future and like messaging in it, like 9/11, all that. There's a whole conspiracy theory for that. But yeah, but the whole idea is that they one of the things I found fascinating about that Back to the Future 2 is they end up going to this alternate timeline, and they got to figure out what got wrong, what changed. Of course, they figure out Biff got that sports book, and they had to go back, but they leave Marty's girlfriend on a bench in front of what would have been her house if it had been the right timeline, but it's not. They leave her there. And then when he comes back and they fix things, she's still on that bench and wakes up. I'm like, wait a second. She switched universes? You left her there. There's some people that get lost in time. There's things like that have always bugged me about the science fiction time travel, like holes, the paradoxes they just let go. You don't solve, that drive you nuts. It's like my wife says, it gives you a headache. Another good one was, did you ever watch the show Heroes?
No.
Well, the show Heroes I really loved. They had a character, Hero was his name, but there was a lot of characters, all had special abilities. But Hero's ability was to travel back in time. And another character picks up that ability from him, and it was during the writer's strike. So I think this had something to do with it. But in this whole scenario, he ends up time traveling. This guy can physically make himself time travel. It's his superpower. One of the characters, not Hero, but another guy, and he has this girl, this Irish girl, that comes with him to this future, this dark doomsday future, and they get separated, and then he has to travel back, and he leaves her there in that future, but then he changes that future. So what happens to her? What happens to that future? He just left her there, and then the writers just like forget about her. Like leave her there. It was during the writer's strike, and then Heroes went way downhill after that. But what happens when you change that time? Does that timeline just disappear? Like in Back to the Future 2, Marty's girlfriend just like, I guess, jumps on her own to the other parallel timeline, or I don't know. They leave her on a bench.
No, I'm not I don't really know what that is. Is that like a superhero thing?
Well, the Heroes thing, yeah, the Heroes was a TV
Oh.
show that was, but I'm talking about even with Back to the Future, when you change the timeline, like I said, in Back to the Future 2, they leave his girlfriend like on the bench in that alternate Biff timeline where Biff's like owns everything, and they leave her on a bench, and then they go travel back to change things, and when they come back, she's left on that, she's still on that bench, but now the timeline's changed, everything else changed around her. You know, like that's the question. Like, how does that work? Those things drove me nuts as a kid. These paradoxes that are throughout science fiction, because they're all like thought experiments in a way, exploring these ideas. You know, what if you had a time machine, you could do this? What would happen? And they all explore it in their own way, and they all leave paradoxes and big holes a lot of times in these storylines, like Back to the Future 2. And see, these are the concepts of time travel that like I said, give people headaches. Give me a headache as much as I love it. You know, when you get into the science fiction and how they explore it, they just sometimes have to leave these holes in the storyline because we don't know. We don't have a time machine as far as we know.
No, we don't, and that's the problem. It's and because things happen clearly, you know, it's a random situation for the most part. You know, it makes you realise it's very different to the world of entertainment, you know, and I'm not really sure if we'll ever really solve, you know, the mystery of time travel. And if we do, you know, what will we do with it anyway?
Right. Well, I've always thought, you know, if we get into the concepts of creating a warp drive or manipulating gravity to travel in space, you know, mastering time dilation, you know, we're not going light speed, we're just warping space. When you get into gravity, that's also going to get into time travel, the possibility. And when you talk about like this technology that's reported to be part of UFOs, if they can be like, you know, look at what they've described UFOs as, what they can do. Manipulating gravity, that would possibly give them the sense to be able to manipulate time, because gravity and time are definitely connected. Like,
maybe we should just leave it alone.
You know, well, that's the thing. We won't. You know, we didn't leave nuclear weapons alone.
No, we won't. No.
If that technology's there, you know, if it's possible, you got damn that our government is looking into it, and that's the conspiracy theory, like with the Montauk Project. It really took off. A lot of the conspiracy theories say it got heavily involved in time travel. You have Andrew Basago, however you say his name, I always butcher it, who claims to have time traveled to the Montauk Project, and others. I don't know if it's just like, you know, one myth building on another. You know, you go back to Al Bielek. But I do find it interesting, like when they talk about like the Aurora chair and time travel and time portals. What's your thoughts on the whole Montauk Project aspect of that? You there, Nick?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's one of these things where you can sort of talk and talk and talk about it all, and still at the end of the day, it's like, so what's the answer, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have, you know, claims that the U.S. government has the ability to time travel. I think that could be pretty preposterous, you know. I mean, you know, if we had that ability, boy, there's a lot of things we could change. You know, what would they use it for if they can't, you know, if they're not changing anything or in the past? But you do have people that are claiming that the Montauk Project was totally about time travel. And I don't know in your research what you know. I know you don't have the ultimate answer to the Montauk Project or anything, or do you think it is just like a bunch of myths building on myths or stories?
No, I don't. I do think something happened with the Philadelphia experiments in '43, and some weird stuff did happen.
Yeah.
But
what about the later Montauk Project and that connection?
No, I don't buy into that. No.
Yeah, that's what I've always wondered. And it seems like people build upon the myth. You know, like there's more people that come out with stories like, I was part of the Montauk Project and I went to Mars and I went to this, and I'm like, okay, you know, that's a lot. I mean, but it's like an urban myth that's just built upon itself over time. Do you believe there's was there any kind of real Montauk Project, or is that all completely, you believe, made up?
Well, I mean, again, the biggest stumbling block, as I see it, all that stuff going on at Montauk. I mean, why is it like in the period, from the 40s onward, and with all these books written and everything else?
Yeah.
Why is it that we haven't seen, a huge amount of activity going on at Montauk itself?
Yeah, it seems like a pretty quiet place. I've seen
Well,
people go
that's
there.
the point. Yeah.
Anyway, it's all underground. Okay. All right, but you got to get underground somehow. They think they'd have a lot more going on there. I don't know. I mean, I've had guests on that claim it's real, and albeit was real. I don't know. But it seems pretty preposterous. It seems pretty way out there, and I think if our government had the ability to time travel, it'd be pretty disastrous for humankind. I don't think they'd make
and
good
all
choices.
this body jumping and everything. I mean, that's too over the top for me, really.
Right, like or putting people's soul into another body. That's where it really gets way out there. But I mean, I've read it all. I've been fascinated by it all. It doesn't mean I believe it all. I've heard all the interviews on it, and I listen and I'm fascinated. But I also know that it's most likely a lot of myth. But I mean, there is a place called Montauk, and there was a facility. But like you said, there's not seem like there's been much that's ever gone on there for the last number of years. It's pretty quiet.
Yeah, it has. I mean, it definitely was at its height round about sort of mid-80s, late 80s, and through the 90s. That definitely was its biggest era, really, for followers.
Somebody else was trying to call in. Hold on. Say 1213. Yeah, they just tried. Let me see if I can get this call. Sometimes I have to call them back. I have an issue. Hold on. See if I get them back on here. But yeah, I've heard these stories over the years. Like I said, Art Bell was a fan. You remember there was a device. I don't know if you ever listened to Art Bell back in the day, but there was a guy, I can't remember, but he had a device that they were all trying out that could hook you up and you could time travel. It was he even gave one to Art Bell, and he was like, Art Bell was afraid to use it because it might electrocute you. I remember he had a guy who called in claiming to had created a device that he was thinking he was going to jump through Madman Markham. Remember that? Ever hearing about that?
He was gonna do what?
Madman Markham had claimed to have invented a time portal. Basically, he had thrown a screw through it, and it came back at a different time, and then eventually he was going to jump through it. And then Art Bell wouldn't hear from him a long time, and everybody's like, "Did he jump through the portal?" I think eventually he got a hold of him and found out he didn't, and then he got shut down by the police or whatever. Let me get to this phone call before we go to the next commercial break. 860 area code. Who do we got?
Hey, Jason, it's Royal. How are you?
Hey, Royal. Thanks for calling in.
How you doing, Jason? How you doing, Nick?
I'm good, thanks.
Oh, great. Listen, my question is, it's kind of a simple question. Do you think that time travel is also possible through astral travel?
To what? Sorry, what travel?
Astral
travel.
Oh yeah. I think when people have sort of astrally travelled, in the night or wherever, and then something happens later, and it's clearly relevant to the dream that happened 2 weeks earlier. Then I think we can make a very good, strong case that when we dream, that at time, not all the time, obviously, but sometimes when we dream, we find ourselves in a different time state, whether it's 2 weeks in the future or a month. I had one of these years ago. Nothing special, nothing exciting, but it was sort of mirrored further down the line to such a degree that I knew that I'd somehow there'd been this sort of manipulation on time. And I think astral travel is a perfect example of how, if we could understand how to astrally travel rather than it just being random, that may be the answer to time traveling, not machines, but using the mind.
I believe so. I believe so. And I'll tell you, Nick, I'm so glad you answered the question this way because I astral travel regularly. I can't do it at will. I wouldn't say I can do it at will, but I have been doing it for years. And one of my main ones that I remember very clearly was back in the mid '80s, the big earthquake out there in California. I know I was there. I was there, and I was actually underneath those two bridges that came down one on top of each other. And I saw the cars falling. I saw the other cars get crushed, and I was shook up by it. And I had, at the time I was married, I had called my wife, and I was speaking to her, and I told her I just had this dream. There's going to be a major earthquake in California. I saw the two bridges fall down one on each other. I saw the cars crush. I saw the concrete coming down. And it happened just a few days later.
Oh, wow.
So I really felt that I traveled a few days into the future and saw that. And I was working at General Motors at the time, and when it happened, I was at work. I worked a 3 to 11 shift, and my ex-wife had called me, and I called her back on a payphone. At the time, we had to go to the payphone. She had paged me. And I called her, and she said, "You got to get to the phone. You got to turn on the news. What you explained the other night just happened." And it really freaked me out. So I was convinced that I kind of traveled to the future there for a few days.
Yeah, that's similar to my experience with 9/11. Even though I didn't have like an astral travel, but what I said, that you know, I had like my wife call me, my cousin call me, because I had said all these things to people like you did, you know, about seeing your astral projection. It freaked them out.
Right. Well, I was convinced, like I said, it was terrifying because in the astral projection, I was there. I mean, I was there, like I was right underneath that bridge as the concrete was falling.
Yeah.
And I have had other ones like that as well, but that's one that really sticks out. And, you know, really, to this day, I really feel like I saw it before it happened, and it happened just the way I saw it. And then when I was watching it on the news, I said, "There's the bridge on top of the other one, and all the cars crushed." At the time, my wife, you know, she was just freaking out. She couldn't believe it. Usually when these things happen for me, I notice that it happens within a 2-week time period. If I have a dream about something like 9/11 or something like that, it's about a 2-week time period before it happens, for me, in my case.
Yeah, well...
But I was always wondering if astral travel was a way to time travel, because I've been in the past, and I've been in the future. There's no way to prove that it's real, but you know what you see and experience, and that really confirmed it for me. That incident.
Well, thank you, Royal, for sharing that. That's amazing.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, have a good night. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks for taking my call, Jason.
Yeah, Royal, have a great night. But yeah, it makes you wonder. I mean, for me, you know, Nick, you had your experience. I had a lot when I was a kid. I had this whole summer of deja vu one year when I was like I think I was 6th grade, going into 6th grade. And I kept on having these dreams. It'd be stupid stuff, you know, a lot of times. It would be inconsequential stuff, but I would dream it exactly before it happened. But then it all accumulated up to this birthday party I went to at a friend's grandparents' house where he lived. And when we pulled in and I saw the big red barn that his grandparents had, I'm like, I dreamt this before. And then all the dream, it just came flooding into me. I'm like, I know what's going to happen tonight. Oh my God. In the dream, I remembered fighting with him with a knife. And, you know, I'm a grade school, you know, but I had this dream. Well, long story short, by the end of that night, a lot of stuff went down. He had an older cousin there that was partying, and he had issues. He had walked away and went inside, and my other friend's like, "Oh, leave him alone. He's upset." I was like, "No, this is it." And he's like, "This is it what?" I'm like, "This is going to happen." Like, I just knew. I ran into that house. I found him there with a knife. He was about ready to slit his wrists. And the next thing you know, I'm fighting with him with a knife, just like it happened in the dream.
Wow.
And this is where my fascination with time travel really, really came hard on me, because just the concept of like, I saw this before it happened. You know, I dreamt all that. It hit me. I knew it before. I could call it before it happened. There's other instances in my life where I did. There was one time I got my wife and me were at a party, and this is before we were married, and we're driving home in the middle of the night. And she goes, you know, she was drank a lot. I wasn't supposed to be the driver. She was, but she somehow ended up drinking too much. And so she's sitting in the passenger seat saying, pull over, I'm going to get sick. And I'm like, it hit me like right there. I go, I've dreamt this before, Susan. She goes, what? I don't care. I said, I've dreamt this before. If we pull over, a cop's going to pull up behind us. And I wasn't planning on being the driver tonight. I wasn't drunk, but I had probably a little bit too much. I would not be comfortable taking a breathalyzer, you know. And this is when I was early 20s, so forgive me. But I'd never really ever drove drunk, you know. Like, it was not my thing. But I had stopped drinking pretty quickly once I realized that she was not going to be my designated driver that night. But it's still, I hadn't planned on it. And I said, I don't want to pull over. There's going to be a cop. She's like, I don't care. Pull the car over. I'm going to puke. And it was a long, dark night out in the middle of nowhere. So, like, the chances of a cop being out there in the middle of the night was very probably slim, except that it was like a holiday 4th of July weekend. And I couldn't see anybody around. I'm like, all right, I pull over. As soon as she opens the door and starts puking, lights are behind us. The cop pulls up. It's just like my dream. And my wife's like, I don't know how you call that later on. You know, like, she's like, you were so right. Like, I don't even know how. Like, you know, like, because I dreamt it and it hit me that moment. And a lot of times I think people's experiences with deja vu is because they dreamt it before. They just forgot.
Yeah, I've had, well, like most people, you know, over the years, a few deja vu, but I've only ever had that one sort of like a prophetic dream. But I knew what it was. It was exactly the events, like 6 months later or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Mirrored what I dreamed 6 months earlier, almost to the, you know, the finest points. You know?
Exactly. And that's why I've had a ton of these experiences, probably more than the normal person. I don't know why. I don't call myself psychic. I have no control over these experiences, and I've had less. I don't remember my dreams as much as I used to, but I do sometimes wonder when I get that deja vu moment. Maybe it's because I dreamt this before, like I used to when I was a kid, and even into my early 20s, I'd have these dreams, and then they would come exactly true. To the T. Like you said, it's like to the letter. I mean, you know, it's exactly seeing the future as it ends up playing out. Now, like I said, I've had instances, and I'll talk about this a little bit when I come back, where, you know, one major one where I ended up changing it. I mean, and drastically could have changed my whole future if I hadn't had this dream that totally predicted, you know, what was going to, you know, happen. You know, a temptation, you could say. But I saw the outcome if I had made that choice in a dream, and it you know, I made a different choice when I was faced with it. All right, well, we got to go to our last commercial break. We'll be back, and we'll continue to take your phone calls, guys, when we come back. Remember, there's only the 2 lines open to call in tonight, the 219-230-4444 or the Skype ID OOJBland00. But we'll be right back after the short commercial break.
Intercepted a transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDeath.net.
This is an APAC studio presentation.
Hi, I'm Barry, owner-operator of Barry's Barometer Barn. Lately, I bet you've been lying awake at night asking yourself, how many barometers do I really need? Well, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we think you need more than one. Otherwise, we're gonna go out of business. Remember, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we don't know the meaning of high-pressure sales. Come on, folks, buy another barometer. I'm trying to put my kids through college, I've got a family to support, and a secret mistress who isn't cheap.
Visit Barry's Barometer Barn, 000 Storm Drive. Come on, folks, buy a barometer. I'm Barry's older brother, Larry, and every time one of you people walk past the store without coming in, Barry beats me.
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, he has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it, but to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all, but he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now. Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the dreamscape.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
You are listening to the Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419. Or by Skype caller ID OOJBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is Nick Redfern. We're talking about his new book that's going to be coming out, Time Travel, or the Time Travel book, or Time Travel, the Science and Science Fiction. All about time travel. It's the first show I got to do where we get dedicated to talk about it. We had some great calls. The phone lines, let me make sure they're open this time. Let's see here, because I'd love to hear, one of the things that somebody asked me at my work the other day, so if you could time travel to one place only, where would you go? For me, my answer was, he was thinking I was going to say something like going to see the Doors live or whatever, because we were talking about music. I want to go back to ancient Sumeria. I want to see what the Anunnaki are about, or ancient history that we don't know. To me, it's still up for debate. Was it aliens? I'd love to go back and answer that question. Maybe they were the time travelers back then. Where would you go? Call in, join the discussion night. Phone lines are open. This only can call in at the 219-230-4444 line, or Skype ID OOJBland OO. But the lines are open. Join the discussion. This last about 25 minutes left of the show. It goes by so fast, especially talking about time travel. But let's go ahead and get back to our guest. So, Nick, if you had a time machine, where would you go? You could go one place. What would you choose?
That's a good question.
Isn't it?
Maybe Roswell, to see what really happened.
That would be very tempting, wouldn't it? Like I said, for me, the choice, the kid at work thought I'd be choosing some great rock concert or something like that, which would be awesome. But I had to pick some ancient mystery. I'd want to go back and see something that is still question what happened, like Roswell. That would be a perfect example, and find out they were fellow time travelers.
You never know.
What interesting about Roswell too, if you talk about the descriptions of the ship, it didn't seem like it was very durable or space worthy. They even talk about being like balsa wood or something like that inside, and odd descriptions like that would make sense if it was just a time machine, their own future version of a DeLorean.
Yeah, there are various people in the UFO field who do buy into the idea that Roswell was sort of a time machine rather than a UFO from another world. But the one who kind of promoted that most was Colonel Philip Corso.
Yeah.
But his story, to be honest, I don't have any faith in that at all.
Yeah, it's been very much questioned over the years. Yeah, I know. But it's still an interesting concept, the idea that...
it is.
One of the things that brought me up when I was a kid, I remember going to this museum. I don't remember where. My parents took me to this museum, and they had this, what would humans look like 3,000 years from now? And it and it shows to me when I saw it, and I was probably 10 or 11, I was like, that looks like the alien from Whitley Strieber, Communion. I'd seen Christopher Walken's Communion, are they from the future? I think that's where that concept really took off in my childhood brain, is when people say, well, there's time travelers, why don't we see the time travelers? We might be. That might be all the UFOs we're seeing up there. It is a concept that is particularly always been interested in, not to say that's what it is. We don't know. But it does seem like a lot of abductees have been shown visions of the future or what's to come. Maybe they're warnings, but maybe they're actually trying to change the past.
Yeah, that's an important point, because you can find a lot of stories where aliens have abducted, well, we presume they're aliens, but where people have been abducted, and they've been shown very eerily graphic images of the nuclear war,
Armageddon,
like
basically.
that. Yeah, and so you have to wonder, why are they doing that? Why are they presenting these images of the future? Is it to warn us, to not to do that, possibly?
But how would they have the images of the future if they're just aliens? How would they know?
Well, yeah.
That's what I've always wondered about that. There's a number of alien abductees have said they've been shown the destruction of Earth as a warning. Yeah. Is it just this could happen thing, or is it this did happen and we're showing you, and you guys need to change your ways? That's the question. The original description of the Roswell aliens isn't like the grays with the black eyes. They're almost like little cherubs, and you could wonder, they super evolved versions of us from a possible future. I mean, even when aliens say, you know, they tell somebody we're from Zeta Reticuli, who's to say they are not still future versions of us that have left this planet way behind, started on a civilization somewhere else, and now have come back and tried to time travel back to the origins of humanity. You know, they're a possible future. You know, these are all those concepts, you know, you could explain a lot and also add a bunch more questions, you know. But I've always been interested why, aliens have showed abductees destruction of Earth. I mean, besides a warning, but, like, is it the future? Are they in, you know, the ability to see the future or travel to the future to bring back that information? And then it gets, of course, you get into parallel timelines involved in all that, too.
Yeah, I mean, it could be multiple reasons, really. You know, when you're dealing with something from another world, you know, it's difficult to sort of know their mindset, you know, and what their mindset actually is. So, but there's no doubt about it that many abductees do see the sort of graphic images of the end of the world and things like that. Maybe it's to wake us up, or possibly it's to demonstrate a future that is inevitable. You know, who knows?
Let's hope. I mean, at what point is showing us if it's inevitable? That's what I always say. It must mean that we can change it if they're showing it us. You know, like, what would be the point of showing it if there's no possibility of change? And like I said, the idea is, you know, that somebody could travel from a possible future, come back here, change things, but it doesn't affect the future they came from. That this is a parallel past. That's what I always loved about the John Titor theory of it, and I've always wondered if that could apply to what we're seeing with the alien phenomenon. It's hard to say. I mean, even biblical references, you wonder. I mean, the angels. I mean, it's God, of course. If you're looking at it in a biblical sense, you know. But if it was like Ancient Aliens says aliens in the Bible, like, how would they know the future of events to come? You know, like the Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed, or did they destroy it, or was it a natural event? And then they warned of other things like Noah's flood, like, you know, how they know of future events or what's going to happen. You know, that again has to point to some kind of time travel.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, a lot of it sort of revolves around terms and concepts, time travel, you know, and astral travel and this and things like this. But I mean, you know, they could all be variations on, you know, one theme. But we're looking at sort of portions of different things. That's why, you know, we get, you know, there's old stories, ancient stories of biblical events and modern day UFO stuff, and you know, and you add all this to time travel. I mean, you know, we could be sort of just using words and terms that kind of put images in our minds, but you know, when in reality, you know, we sort of need to be looking deeper, you know, and digging deeper.
You know, we talk about astral travel. There's a lot of people within the past life community where, like, regression, where they actually do future life progression with people, and they can see their future incarnations, which throws the whole time window out. You know, there, you know, you have past lives and you have future lives you can travel to and visit. Makes you wonder. You know, I've always wondered with people when you talk about the parallel universe thing too, is people that have past life memories. I'm one of them. You know, is it possible you lived a past life, but not even in your own timeline? When you throw in the concept of parallel timelines, you know, you could live the past in another timeline and you get thrown here. And it's you know, if aliens are involved in time travel, or there's some concept there, I mean, that would just make the whole picture even more complex. You always say one of the reasons why we may never get full disclosure is that the whole picture of it is so complex, there's just no way to relay that information without completely blowing people's minds.
Well, yeah, I mean, and right now, you know, we're sort of, you know, seeing UFO activity and discussion, you know, on sort of like a, you know, unprecedented kind of situations and times, you know. So, you know, I kind of think, I'm not sure I'm fully sure you know, we're facing some kind of disclosure, but we could be, you know, and if we do get disclosure, well, maybe we'll find out if, you know, they are aliens or is it really us? You know?
Yeah. Well, it explained a lot. If they were time travelers, not aliens, and they came back and like met with Eisenhower or whatever, met with our leaders, and said, "Listen, you cannot disclose our presence here because we're from the future, and this will totally screw things up." That would kind of explain some of the secrecy, maybe. It could be, even given they might have, but even their interaction with our government, that would be a huge, you're stepping on a billion butterflies. So again, you wonder like how much of an extent we are influenced by future travelers, if that is happening. I don't know. Like I said, the whole thing gets paradoxical unless you play in like the parallel timelines, possible futures, then maybe makes it more possible that some of what people are experiencing is some kind of form of a parallel time traveler in a sense. It's hard for me to think that it wouldn't work without parallel universe theory, basically, or parallel times, kind of the John Titor concept. Because either if it isn't that concept, if it's true like time travel, there are future, then they'd be stepping on like a billion butterflies. Doesn't matter if the government comes out with disclosure or not. Their influence here, us seeing them in the sky, people being abducted, all that changes everything. It would change the future.
Well, yeah, and I mean, when we talk about aliens as well, I mean, it creates this extraterrestrial angle. But I mean, Whitley Strieber said in some of his books that he thought that it might be impossible to explain what they really are. Maybe they're not time travelers or aliens as we see it, but they have the ability to move through space and time, but maybe they don't consider themselves,
a part of it.
As there's something just aliens, there's something even more bizarre,
Like their time runs different than ours, or I mean, look at people's experiences on ship when they are abducted. The physical phenomenons they feel like they have on the ship. It could be like time dilation, or they could be on a whole other time frame or dimension than us. I've never thrown out the question if are they time travelers or are they aliens. I always have a feeling there's a little bit more, both going on. Like there's kind of, like I said, there could be possibly in a reference in one point of view aliens, and another point of view time travelers, but both.
Or they can do both, yeah.
Right, because if we went off world in the future, 3,000 years from now, or whatever they're from, and made a new civilization somewhere else, and then came back here and then time traveled, we'd pretty much be aliens to the people we're seeing. I mean, we've physically evolved. I mean, look what they would say if we were living on Mars, how we could change physically. And, what would happen to us living on another planet with a different gravity or a different environment, how we'd physically change and evolve. And then if we came back here, we would appear completely alien.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's not out of the picture that that we are going to still look, like 10,000 years, 50,000 years from now, I'd be very surprised if we'd look still exactly the same.
Well, look how H.G. Wells treated it.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Yeah, we could either be, the ultimate Superman, or we could be just like radioactive, degenerate,
eating ourselves,
monsters,
eating the beautiful people.
Yeah.
Treating half the civilization as cattle and eating them. That's a beautiful concept, but that's what I love about science fiction. Another TV show that did not live long was called Terra Nova. It wasn't strictly like about time travel, but what it is, and I love the concept of the show, and I was highly disappointed when they canceled it, is the future civilization, of course, is crumbling, pollution, the world's falling apart, and humans end up accidentally opening up a gateway to 24 million years ago or something like that, like way back in the day. And they don't have to worry about the butterfly effect even then. Because basically they're starting to send humans back, and it's a one-way trip. They can't come back, but they send them back through this portal to go back 24 million years ago, whatever it was, 124 million years ago. And they're not going to affect their future. No matter what they do, they're kill a billion butterflies, kill a dozen raptors or dinosaurs or whatever. You're not going to affect the future because it's a parallel past. And they figure this out because they send a probe back into that portal and let it sit there for millions of years and see if they can find that same probe in their timeline. They put it in a place where it should be saved or something like that, and it's not there. So they're figuring this is a parallel past. So we can go there. We're not going to affect a thing. And what they do is they start shoveling civilization back to that parallel past timeline to escape their future of doom. I thought it was a brilliant concept, and I was sad when they, like I said, only got one season.
No, I've not heard of that one at all.
It was called Terra Nova. Like I said, you probably didn't hear about it because it got just one season and then they canceled it. Like all my favorite sci-fi shows, Firefly and all that. Gets one good show, one great season, and then they cancel it. You know, Nelson's ratings. Obviously, the people that are involved in that aren't big sci-fi fans. The sci-fi shows always get canceled so quick, most of the time. But yeah, I always thought that was an interesting concept, and I, thinking about on the alien concept is that they could come back here, do whatever they want, be in our skies, affect us, change us, abduct us, do whatever. It doesn't affect their future because they are from a possible parallel future, a possible timeline, but not in exact could be our future, but they're versions of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It could be multiple things going on there.
Yeah, that's the concept that's hard. I try to explain to people, and they're like, "Huh, what?" But these are things I've thought about for many, many, many years, ever since I was a kid. And I saw that evolution thing I saw in the museum, wherever I was with my parents, and I saw this 3,000 years from now, what man could look like or evolve to. I'm like, well, that looks like the alien right off of Whitley Strieber's book, except for the no black eyes. This is more human. And then if you look at, like I said, the Roswell reports of the cherub-like looking aliens and other people's abduction reports are not always like the black-eyed grays. Sometimes they're this kind of human-looking, like creature. It doesn't have the black eyes, but has even like large retinas or whatever. You just wonder, how much of that plays in with time, and the aliens, or if they're time travelers. I've seen it, again, this has been covered in so much science fiction in the last number of years, but it's the question, are we seeing time travelers when we see UFOs and see all that? We're going to run out of time here. So this book, you originally had it planned for October 5th, and you said it's going to get pushed back a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's just to do with distribution things, I think. But it won't be that long. It'll be maybe another extra 2 weeks, so possibly about 3 to 4 weeks now it should be out. And the publisher is Visible Ink Press. And
I know you can pre-order it right now, right? I mean, that's what I saw. You can pre-order it.
Yeah, you can already pre-record it. Order it.
Yeah.
But it should. I mean, it maybe they'll get it. The problems sorted out quicker. But if not, it still won't be more than about 3 to 4 weeks, something like that.
Well, I'm excited. Like I said, I gobble up anything I can that's on time travel.
Cool.
Fiction to nonfiction to scientific theory and all that. I always enjoyed listening to different physicists talk about the possibilities of time travel. Sometimes they're kind of like dash your dreams of time travel, but it is in science that they look at these concepts and figure there could be a possibility of bending time, and when they look at like black holes and what's out in nature that's bending time in a sense or creating time distortions. Look what gravity in itself does when it affects time. Do you think, I mean, throw out all the conspiracy stuff and all the, Al Bielek stories and all that. Do you think it is possible one day for them to create a machine that would travel back in time?
Well, I do, because of the fact that people do have these, weird dreams, and time clearly is being altered. But the big question is, we can say for sure, that people have deja vu, they have prophetic dreams, they have astral dreams, things like this, which push them, whether the future or the past. But the problem is, we may be able to say for sure this is all going on, but it may be a long time before we actually figure out how and why it's happening.
Right. Well, I mean, to me, the most ones that fascinate me the most are the people who, like the two women you were talking about, what is France or whatever, they had the time slip. Time slips, the phenomenon, people physically being in a place, a town or whatever, and interacting with different people. I mean, that is like, that's the bread and butter of time travel. I mean, that's it. They travel. It's hard for me to imagine that's just a residual town ghost, like that. To me, I've always felt that they actually, there's something with time that people can slip through for a moment, and then it corrects itself and they're back in the present. And you get, like I said, the 401 missing cases and people wondering if people slip through time and disappear. The people who do disappear just off the face of the earth, you wonder if they're back in time. My wife is, I haven't read the books or seen this, and I'm supposed to sit down and watch with my wife, but her girls' night, they've been watching, what's that, darn it. Oh, God, I can't think of the name. It's about a woman who gets, she ends up traveling back to, Victorian England, or I don't remember. I've not seen it. My wife keeps saying, "You're gonna love this show. You need to see it." What is it? Darn it, I can't remember it. But she falls through a time slip, basically, and ends up in I don't remember what time period. My wife keeps telling me I got to watch the show, and now I can't think of it. Somebody gets it in the chat room here in the next few minutes. I can't think of the name now. Oh. But it's there's so many. I've read so many stories over the years of people the not time travel stories, like time machine stories, but people who slip through. And that's probably my more favorite than the time machine. As much as I love the technicality stuff of how they built the time machine in a science fiction story or how it consists of, what it works, I always love the ones where people physically just slip on their own, or somewhere in time kind of concepts. Those are just, I don't know, I always end up enjoying those a little more. Maybe because it just feels like it could happen to anyone. At any moment, you could just slip back in time. That'd be great right now. I'm sure a lot of people would like to slip away from 2021 right now. That's why
was that last bit?
I said I'm sure there's a lot of people right now would like to slip away, find a time slip, and go back to 2021, or get out of 2021, go hit up 1970s or 1980s or whatever.
Yeah.
Simpler times, I mean, I think time travel could become a lot popular again with people, because people start, during bad times, people start thinking about the past, and I think that's when time travel as a concept or in stories or in TV takes off a little bit, as people get, that nostalgic feeling, member berries or whatever they call it on South Park, but they could go travel back to these times, you can't get, they're totally different. Than what it is now. Like if you knew what you know now and could go back and change things, kind of deal. But even just to go back in time and live a life that's totally different than now, that's what I again loved about Stephen King's book, is he really captures that feeling in the book of making you feel like what the character feels living in a different time period. Those are the time travel books I totally enjoy, when they really make you feel like what it's like to be in this different time period. As close as I'm ever going to get to time travel.
Well, that sort of ties into that sort of nostalgia, if only kind of situation, and I think that's one of the things that sort of makes people sort of gravitate towards time travel, that angle that if only we could stop this from happening, or if I'd only done this. But so far, as we know, we haven't been able to, to fix that, if you like, or achieve it. But who's to say somebody else hasn't?
Yeah. Oh, here's a good one. John from the chat room put this up, and I remember hearing about this. Time slips are supposed to happen on Bold Street in Liverpool, England. Have you heard of that one? I've heard some stuff about that street.
No, I
having
haven't.
time. There's stories of people having time slips there. It's kind of weird. Yeah, it's Bold Street in Liverpool. I've heard of that, John, in the chat room.
I'll have a look.
Yeah, it's an interesting. People, they're still reporting it's like micro time slips there.
I'll have a look at that.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, if that is possible, if there are places that have time slips, it brings you into the whole realm of Skinwalker Ranch and stuff people experience there. Is that things coming, besides us slipping into another time period, what things slip into our time? The Bigfoot thing's been brought up. Are we just witnessing the ghost or a time slip of Gigantopithecus or Thunderbirds. You know, you brought up the Thunderbird picture. Like, as people who'd seen Thunderbirds, was that just a Thunderbird who slipped through a time portal and went back to his time? You know, if we can slip back into the past, what things from the past can slip into the future?
Oh yeah, I mean, all of that, you know, is sort of relevant in the sense of if our science and our technology, you know, sort of keeps going forward, hopefully in the right way. I mean, you know, a lot of these anomalies that we're talking about now won't be anomalies anymore. But you know, I guess it depends how far we're able to go in what time frame. You know, how long is it going to be before we can sort of solve these kind of anomalies that people have? You know,
I saw one scientist, and his name's missing from my brain right now, that has talked for years about that he has his time travel device, which involved laser and light, basically bending it enough to travel and send like a message back in time, which that one's always bothered me. Like, if you could build a machine to send yourself a message, it's like that Bill and Ted kind of paradox where, like, you give yourself instructions like, I'm going to go in the future and do this and it'll come back. You know, like if you build this machine, it was like a one-way door too, because you could only travel back through when you built the original door. Like, so you built a machine, so that's only time once you start going into the future. If you go back, you can only go back to the time you built that machine. It's like a bridge or a gateway. And I always thought, well, that's got to be riddled with paradox to be able to do that. I can't remember the scientist's name, the physicist that has the equations and the idea of bending light using lasers to like actually time travel or send a message back in time. But there, like I said, there's different physicists and people that have explored this concept. It's always going to be fascinating to me. That's always going to be the question when people say they see a UFO. Are we seeing aliens or time travelers? I think I'm going to have that question probably till unless there's some full disclosure, I'll probably always have that question. I'm always going to have that wonder. For you in the future, I mean, you got this book coming out. Any other projects for you coming out? Oh, I knew what I forgot to ask too, just to mention to you. I saw, because I've been talking to Josh Turner. You guys got action figures. I think that is so freaking awesome.
I haven't seen them.
No?
But, no. I mean, I've seen a picture of them on the internet. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so cool you guys have action figures. Somebody in the paranormal world has to get an action figure. And I want a Nick Redfern action figure, man.
Yeah, that was pretty funny when I saw those starting to come out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Ever check out Paranormal Roundtable with Josh Turner? I've started talking to him, and I've seen his post of I saw the action figure of him. I don't think I've seen the one of you yet either. I don't know if they've shown that or not, but I saw the one of Josh. Like, I'm so jealous. That's so awesome. You got an action figure. How cool is that? Well, Nick, it's a true honor to have you on the show. Definitely can't wait to check out time. Now, I have on the title Time Travel, the Science and Science Fiction. You said it's going to be called Time Travel Book, or is it Time Travel, the Science and Science Fiction?
No, it's the Time Travel Book.
Time Travel Book. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Time Travel Book, guys. Check that out. Like I say, you can pre-order it on Amazon. I am so excited. Like I told my wife, that's like, unless you get me a copy, Nick. I said, that's on my Christmas list to get for me, because that's a book I can't wait to get. Thank you again. I can't wait to have you back on the show with your next, whatever newest other book you're going to have come out, because you're always constantly writing. I always enjoy your stories on, what's the website? I totally drew a blank that you write on all the time.
Mysterious Universe.
Mysterious Universe, yes. I always enjoy your articles on there. So you can check him out, Mysterious Universe. Check out any of his books. He's got over 60 of them. Any topic you want to get into, Nick's got it. So thank you so much, Nick. Have a great night. But that's it for the show, guys. We are at the end. Let me see here. Oh, there we go. We'll be back next week with guest. Right. Have a great night, Nick. Till next time.
Jason. See you later.
Next week, we're going to have Dr. Master Z Gong Sha. He is a Tao Grandmaster and author of 25 books. He's into Chinese calligraphy. First time we're going to have him on the show, so it'll be interesting to learn about Taoism and spiritual beliefs and we'll get into some paranormal subjects. When you get to Taoism, you talk about like Jedis and the Force and Star Wars. I've always been interested in it. Practiced a little bit myself back in the day. So I'll be interested to talk to him next Sunday, same bad time, same bad channel, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Central, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time. definitely help the show out. You can share the show. Everybody who shares out the show, you are the biggest help to the show. Keep telling people about Paranormal Soup, a place where you can come, open discussion about any of these weird subjects, a place where you won't be judged, and we have open minds and discussion about these subjects. That's why I enjoy my community. Again, we'll miss heavily the phone calls of Marcus, who is one of those people, a part of that community. You can be a part of that community. Great people here. You can also help out Super Chat on YouTube next week. You come on, you always can donate on Super Chat on YouTube. But $2 a month on Patreon does help pay the bills if you want to donate that way. We've got a lot of different ways to help out the show. Sharing out is the biggest one. Thanks, everybody, for watching. See you next week.